When Wei Zongying drove the last lap like a desperate lunatic, he continued to accelerate, the sound wave was manic, and the exclamation of the audience in the racing track was one after another. The Arabic numerals representing the time on the electronic display are constantly beating. Not long ago, a car that failed to turn and fell off the track caught fire, and the fire had just been extinguished. Wei Congying didn't seem to be affected in any way, and he didn't slow down. He was like an arrow off the string, and the sound of the racing car stimulated everyone's hearing. When crossing the line at the end, Fang Xiaolan's legs in the stands were numb. When he saw Wei Zongying stop the car, he breathed a sigh of relief, and he didn't know if it was his breath or his soul. Their mutual friends saw it, cheered Wei Kong, and laughed at Lin Fang. "What are you doing? I should really share A Kong's courage with you." With the support of his girlfriend, Lin Fang managed to stand still by holding on to the handrail on the stand. "Damn it, he just finished his confinement, I went to his house to pick him up to play. If something happened to him, my dad would let me. Is it okay to be buried with you?" As he said that, Lin Fang rubbed his legs and continued to mutter, "Damn it, I knew he was going to race again, and I wouldn't bring him here even if we broke up." It's not easy for Lin Fang. The racers don't know it, so he got off the car. He took off his protective gear and rubbed his hair messed up by the protective gear and helmet. He walked quickly to the auditorium, turned his head to look at the new record refreshed on the electronic screen, and smiled at the few people in the same room. "Is he handsome?" Lin Fang punched him in the chest, threw himself on him, grabbed his collar, and wanted to cry without tears. "Handsome, so handsome that my legs are weak. You drive down there, and I am in the stands, and my soul is in the stands. You chase after the car. You have an accident, what should I do? Don't cry like you have a crush on me." Wei Congying threw him the protective gear in his hand and teased him, "Do you want my brother to take you for a walk?" Of course, this proposal was not approved by Lin Fang, and he immediately pulled Wei Zongying to the sidelines. The cheers in the field continued, the roar of the engine and the smell of burning tires stimulated the blood in the body. He is a natural pursuit of excitement. On the way back, Lin Fang did not hand over the steering wheel to Wei Congying, but drove for 60 yards to take Wei Congying back to his apartment. On the road, the elders talked endlessly like you are the only son in your family and you can't do anything. Wei Congying got tired of hearing that, put his arm on the car door, and turned to look at him. "Lin Fang, didn't you realize that you forgot your girlfriend at the racing track?" Hearing this, Lin Fang slammed on the brakes without thinking about traffic safety at all, and directly parked the car in place, giving Wei Congying a chance to kiss the seat on the back of the head. Inertia makes people rush forward, and then is pulled back by the seat belt. The entire back was hit on the seat, and the seat of the blue and white car was still hard, and Wei Kong should be quite hurt from the impact. Lin Fang turned his head to look at the empty back seat, and said it was over. But it immediately returned to normal. "Forget it, anyway, I was going to leave anyway." Lin Fang said so, but he stopped the car by the side of the road, unlocked the door, and said to Wei Congying, "Your apartment is only 1 block away, so walk back by yourself. Send me a message when you get home, do you know?" Wei Congying unbuckled his seat belt, made 2 perfunctory bangs, closed the car door, and was suddenly free. It wasn't Wei Zong who answered obediently and went home, walking towards the supper stall with his hands in his pockets. It's not yet warm enough in April, and he's wearing a denim jacket lined with Arc'teryx's black round neck and long sleeves. Before entering the supper stall, he could smell the smell of cumin and charcoal fire. The boss's business is very good. Just after 0 o'clock, it is the best time for business. After ordering, he is looking for a seat with a beer. In the end, he found a girl who was alone in the corner. The table was not big, and there were 4 or 5 empty glass bottles on the table. He asked if it was possible to join the table. Some drunk people at the other end of the table didn't look up, they put their hands on their foreheads, as if they had drunk too much, they only hummed lightly. Wei Kanjiaying actually doesn't like bright colors, dark colors are his favorite. But I have to admit that the person in front of me is wearing a very nice orange dress. She wears a long black knit sweater, her curly hair is pinned behind her ears, and she wears it on the ear that Wei Kong should see. 4 earrings. Wei Kanjiaying took out his mobile phone and saw the message Lin Fang had sent him not long ago. Maybe it was sent during the traffic lights, reminding Wei Kong to go home directly and not to make fun of his life. Wei Kanjiaying ignored Lin Fang's news, and the supper was healed. He got up to get it, and when he came back, he realized that he had forgotten to return a bottle opener. The plastic chair was not easy to open the bottle cap, and when he was about to get up from the annoyance, the woman opposite looked up. Rather than a woman, a girl might be more accurate. Although the makeup on his face was a bit heavy, he still looked like a college student at best. If she drank all the wine on the table, then she would be a shameless person. The face is not red, the neck is not red, only the eyes are red. Wei Kong should feel that the possibility of crying cannot be ruled out. Those eyes are beautiful, like water cut. She suddenly smiled at herself. Why are you here? Wei Kanjiaying was taken aback, he swore he didn't know the person in front of him. Maybe the drunkard mistook the person, so he didn't answer. She reached out to ask for the wine bottle in his hand, then picked up the chopsticks on the table, and with a light pry, the glass bottle cap was in her hand. Very skilled at opening bottles. Her previous non-answer didn't seem to have affected her. After she handed him the wine bottle, she looked at herself with her chin resting on her cheeks, her eyes full of fermented love. I've been waiting for you for a long time, from daytime until dark, they all said you wouldn't come. Who said? Wei Kanjiaying labeled her as liking him, but seeing how infatuated she was, her tone of voice was infatuated, and her eyes were infatuated. But I don't have any records of her in my memory, so she won't be in love with her all the time, right? But she seemed to be too drunk. After saying this, she lay down on the table and fell asleep completely. It was only left for Wei Kanjiaying, who didn't quite understand, to admire the top of her head. Wei Kanjiaying sat across from her, with beer and barbecue. To be honest, barbecue is not that tasty. If you put too much pepper, the carbon doesn't seem to be very good. The taste of carbon is attached to the surface of the food, which makes the taste of the grilled a lot worse. Some were shamefully wasted in the end, and he routinely used donations to counteract the guilt of wasting food. The person opposite was still lying on his stomach, and an empty soda can rolled to the edge of the table not far away, landed on the ground and crawled for a certain distance, and was finally crushed by a foot. Lin Fang sent him a message, asking if he was home and asking him to take a photo for himself. He cares more about him than his own parents. Concerned about it, Wei Kanjiaying pretended not to see it, and when he turned his attention away from the phone, he heard laughter from the side. Bad laugh. As soon as he looked up, he saw several drunk and ugly men set their eyes on the girl opposite him. She didn't know what kind of situation she was in, so she just passed out drunk. Wei Kanjiaying had already eaten and wanted to leave, but it's not good to just leave the girl opposite here alone. But take it away, in case the fairy jumps and wrongs him, he will not be happy. He chose a compromise method, that is, he did not disappoint the girl's love for him, and did not leave him hidden dangers. Wei Kanjiaying sent her to the police duty room. Wei Kanjiaying pulled her up from the chair, and she regained consciousness briefly from the movement of being pulled up. Her vision was blurry, but she could clearly see the plates on the table, and said in a somewhat critical tone, "You're wasting food." Wei Kanjiaying supported her, hummed and apologized, but in a very insincere tone, "I'm sorry." When Shi Yun woke up in the morning, there was nothing in his body that was not uncomfortable. She drank a lot of alcohol, but before she could break up, the policeman on duty explained the situation to her, saying that a kind person passing by sent her here. She was covered with a coat, a denim jacket, and she could still smell the barbecue faintly. Shi Yun thanked the people in the duty room embarrassingly. He spent the whole night on the bench last night, and now he feels uncomfortable all over. The morning sun fell on her face, and Shi Yun inexplicably felt as if she had passed away, and she raised her head to feel the sun. The sunlight that wasn't too harsh but also had a hint of the chill from last night turned everything in sight after closing his eyes into a slightly orange color. Suddenly, I thought of the person I met yesterday, that face really resembles him. Shi Yun bought a lot of breakfast at the intersection, and asked the boss to take her to the police duty room instead, apologizing for the trouble she caused yesterday. The place where I had supper yesterday was very close to the old campus of Capital University, but it still took 20 minutes to walk back to the dormitory. After graduating from undergraduate, the dormitory environment has also been improved a lot. There are 4 people in a dormitory, and Shi Yun has a better relationship with a girl named Shi Yuan who is in the same major as the bed next door. Of the other 2 people in the dormitory, one lived in the cell room to catch reports, and the other was used as free labor to substitute for the tutor. When Shi Yun returned to the dormitory lightly, Shi Yuan was alone. Shi Yuan was not sleeping, wearing glasses. Instead of lying on the bed, she was sitting on the chair below, holding a notebook to catch up with homework. Hearing when Shi Yun opened the door, she turned her head and greeted the person at the door, "Are you back? Well, you got up so early." Seeing that she was awake, Yun didn't deliberately let go, "Please slow down." Shi Yuan continued typing on the keyboard, "I haven't slept all night." "Didn't sleep all night?" Shi Yun put the coat that the man covered her last night on her chair, walked behind Shi Yuan and prepared to help her with her homework as best she could. Shi Yuan sighed, "I didn't sleep all night, just catching up with homework. I haven't finished writing yet." "No, I even broke up." Shi Yun was taken aback. She didn't care much about her roommate's emotional life, but Shi Yuan seemed to have been talking with her boyfriend for many years. Shi Yuan sat cross-legged on the lazy sofa, and left her hands from the computer keyboard. Suddenly I felt that he was very humble. "We went to the restaurant for dinner yesterday and met a boy who was selling detergent. I want to say that if you don't buy it, you won't buy it." As a result, he insisted on discussing the ingredient list with others, and then used his chemical knowledge to criticize the other party's detergent ingredients, which was dish soap mixed with water. At that time, everyone around him was looking at him, and I felt so embarrassed. Shi Yun was only in a daze for a short while. She saw Shi Yuan's gift on the table, and thought of the junior who had pursued Shi Yuan for several weeks. She's not Shi Yuan, so I don't know if Shi Yuan really turned her head down on her boyfriend suddenly after breaking up, or because she got her head on someone else. He just gave a perfunctory hum, and didn't feel like helping her with her homework, so she went to bed to catch up on sleep. Shi Yuan didn't seem to notice Shi Yun's resentment, and asked again, "Yesterday, you went to burn paper for your mother in Qingming, did you wear this bright dress?" There was another perfunctory hum from the mosquito net. The day she met Wei Zongying again, Shi Yun had classes all day during the day, and went to the library to catch up on group homework at night. The boy sitting opposite her in the study area in the library kept shaking his legs. After Shi Yun's table trembled for 2 minutes, she kicked him under the table as a warning. The other party did not get angry, but bowed his head apologetically. But it didn't stop. Shaking his legs seemed to have become his instinctive little habit. Shi Yun looked at the unsatisfactory homework, then checked the time on the phone and finally chose to leave. The weather in the capital in May has not yet warmed up, and I can't see a single star when I look up. Some incomplete moons are hidden behind the clouds, and the moonlight is not as bright as the neon lights on the building next door. The power of the street lights was unstable, and one light flickered a few times before it came on. The floor of the cafeteria was mopped every day, but I always felt that the soles of my shoes were still a little sticky. Shi Yun brought out a piece of fried rice from the cafeteria, and met Wei Zongying just like that. At that time, Shi Yun didn't know his name. He was standing under the streetlight facing the cafeteria gate, the cigarette in his mouth had just been lit, and the red dots flickered on and off. He was wearing a black short sleeve with bright graffiti patterns on it. Trousers, sneakers of the same color, and a thick silver chain around his neck. And squatting next to him was a crying girl. His expression was indifferent and impatient. The author has something to say. Wei Conjaying was still in the bar an hour ago. This time it was called out by Lin Fang. Because Wei Zongying tricked Lin Fang to take him out last time, but he ran to the car again, so Lin Fang already had a psychological shadow about calling him out to play, and basically didn't ask Wei Zongying to come out to play this month. During the month when he and Lin Fang didn't go out to play, Wei Zongying's life was very simple, playing games at home or going to the gym to exercise, and more often went to the car factory to modify the car, and chatted with the technician about the modification experience. Wei Conjaying was quite surprised when he received a text message from Lin Fang asking him to come out to play today. The location is a bar. The resident band in the bar brightened up the atmosphere. Walking in with loud music and dazzling lights, Wei Conjaying found Lin Fang. Lin Fang drank some wine and sat on the sofa in the booth, unable to hide his drunkenness. He took out his car keys from his pocket and threw them to Wei Conjaying. I have a bag in my car, give it to my girlfriend for me, and break up with me along the way. Wei Conjaying threw back the car keys when he heard that it was an errand, and refused him, no. Don't. After drinking, Lin Fang didn't have the same brain and hands, and couldn't keep up with his reaction. He didn't catch the car key thrown by Wei Zongying, and the car key fell to the ground. Lin Fang bent down to pick up the dropped car keys, and put them back into Wei Conjaying's hand. Wei Conjaying, you feel your conscience and say, do you think my brother treats you well? How many times have I stabbed you in the ribs? Not much. Wei Conjaying and Lin Fang were young. When he was a child, Lin Fang smashed the windows of other people's houses for him, beat the same boy together, and shared Ultraman cards. When he was studying, Lin Fang unconditionally trusted his answers to all his homework. These are all deadly friendships. Lin Fang was miserable, and struck while the iron was hot. Do you know how many times SpongeBob SquarePants sang the theme song of the cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants? You don't know, you don't understand, you know your car, and you don't care about me. Sing it 8 times in total. Wei Conjaying rolled his eyes. Lin Fang didn't expect that he actually answered himself, and cursed, damn, how boring you are, you don't dance the opening song every time and you still count. However, Wei Conjaying still helped him run this trip, and it was not for nothing. Next time, Lin Fang would need to help him cover. Half an hour later, Wei Zongying drove Lin Fang's car into the dormitory area of the old campus of the capital university. The headlights illuminated an area ahead, and moths flew around in front of the headlights. The person waiting for him was already standing at the intersection of the supermarket in the dormitory area. Wei Conjaying took the paper bag that Lin Fang had mentioned and got out of the car. He didn't like to procrastinate when doing things, and it was straightforward to break up for Lin Fang. This is a breakup gift from Lin Fang. Wei Conjaying handed over the paper bag. He asked me to tell you for him that you broke up. The girl in front of her didn't accidentally cover her face and cry. Wei Kong should find this scene very familiar. He has talked with several girlfriends and mentioned breakups several times. He said that the probability of girls crying after breaking up is as high as 75%. There is one exception, he remembers that person is a shrew cursed him. Hearing the sound of crying, Wei Conjaying suddenly missed the only girl who called him a scumbag. Super efficient breakup, 3 minutes of scolding and it was over. Unlike now, it feels like half an hour can't solve it. If crying was really useful, Lin Fang couldn't even let him talk about breaking up. Hearing that cry, Wei Kong should have a headache. He took out half a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and let the person on the other side continue to cry. He leaned on the pole and lit the cigarette. Looking up at the street lamp, he exhaled a small puff of smoke ring, and the white smoke was lingering. He put the cigarette to his mouth again, and the smoke filled his eyes. He looked at the people who came out of the cafeteria through the white smoke, and he looked familiar. She has a plain face, and her hair is tied with shark clips, but the hair volume seems to be a bit too much, and it is not easy to tie it up. Pretty is actually more or less similar, but she is very non-programmed, and the random moles that appear like a few ink dots when you flick a pen on a white paper are very recognizable. She didn't wear earrings today. He was wearing a loose thin sweater with suspenders inside, and a pair of light-colored wide-leg jeans. He probably wore canvas shoes and stepped on the heels of the shoes. Wei Kanjieying recognized her. She was the drunken person he met at the barbecue stall in April. There was still a difference between the plain makeup and the makeup at that time. I felt that the makeup technique was even a little behind. She walked over slowly and recognized him. Want to help? Better yet. The grey soot was blown away by the wind. Wei Kong should see that she took a tissue from her school bag to the girl. Lin Fang got a call halfway, and Wei Kanjieying walked a little further away with his phone before answering. Called to ask him how things are going. Wei Kanjieying took the last puff of his cigarette. We're sharing it. The phone call ended in less than a minute, and he walked back. The two men were having a very heated discussion on the specific manifestation of men's despicable genes in the process of biological evolution. To put it bluntly, it means men are not good things. She seems to be finishing the final conclusion. Put your finger under the nose, as long as you can feel the man who can feel the gas, there are some wolf-hearted genes in his body. It is also a matter of concentration if you don't overturn a boat of people with one shot. Shi Yun patted her on the shoulder, and continued to persuade, at least I gave you the latest Fendi model. I'm perfunctory in action, but sincere in my wallet, so it's not empty-handed. As he spoke, Shi Yun heard a very light laugh. Looking up at the person who made the phone call and returned, he didn't avoid looking at each other, nor did he hide his smile. When the moon shifted by 2 degrees, the girl left. The moon was still pale, high in the sky. Shi Yun felt that the fried rice in his hand was not hot anymore. Seeing the yellow paper bag and people disappearing into the night, Shi Yun said, "Thank you last time. At that time, I drank a little too much, and if someone picked up the corpse, the consequences would be disastrous." As he spoke, the person in front of him was slightly taken aback, but his expression quickly recovered, with a faint smile, "Thank you this time." "Shi Yun, you're welcome." He followed the example of her, "You were welcome last time." Once a person talks like this twice in a row, it gives a strong signal that he doesn't want to continue the communication. Shi Yun accepts it when he sees it. When he is about to say goodbye, he takes out his mobile phone from his pocket and asks if she can exchange contact information. He noted his name when the friend request was sent. To ask Wei Kanjieying why he added WeChat with Shi Yun, he thought about it. The gene of a man's heart and dog's lungs exists as well as the gene of a man's lust, and it is also a matter of concentration. Some people love beauty, some people love beauty. He just finds beauty more easily than others. However, the next day, Wei Kanjieying used her as an excuse to help comfort the girl who was crying when Lin Fang broke up, and asked Shi Yun to eat. As a result, the news sent in the past fell silent, and within 2 days, Wei Zongying forgot about this matter and Shi Yun. When I think of Shi Yun again, it has been half a month later. In half a month, he once ran into the granddaughter of a neighbor of his grandma while playing in a bar. After Wei Zongying blew 2 bottles that day, he got up to go to the toilet. Bar toilets are not difficult to find, but difficult for people who drink too much. Dizzy. When he walked to the door of the toilet, 2 women were arguing. When he walked over, he saw that the short man was about to lose. Adhering to the fine tradition of women quarreling and men not interrupting, Wei Kanjieying passed them sideways. When he finished using the toilet and came out with a cigarette in his mouth, the short girl was left crying by the side of the aisle. The person squatting and crying could only see a pair of shoes passing by her. She stopped Wei Kanjieying, saw the cigarette in his mouth, and asked him for one. The lighter was turned on, and her clothes were a little messed up during the quarrel because of the pushing and shoving just now. She asked Wei Zongying to teach her to blow smoke rings. Wei Kanjieying was curious about the person in front of him who he didn't know but who called him by his name accurately. She seemed to have noticed it, and introduced herself with a sigh. "We met, my grandma and your grandma are neighbors. We played together when we were young, probably in the first and second grades. Later, after my parents divorced, I didn't go often. My grandma is there." Wei Kanjieying didn't have much impression of this person, but after a few days of contact, the girl and Wei Kanjieying confessed their love, and then the two fell in love. He is an amorous person. Regardless of his acquired appearance or genetics, his feelings are mass-produced products in the fast food era. Because he is easy to come into contact with the love signals sent to him by various girls. Realizing that he can benefit from his appearance and his own conditions, he found that boys always like to ask him out when they go out, because he is there so that girls can come out. Although he couldn't understand the behavior of girls wanting to fall in love with a rotten guy like him, he understood what was going on in their minds. A familiar saying, 1001 Nights. Scheherazade complex is more common than colds in contemporary times. During this period, Grandpa Wei Zongying happened to be celebrating his 80th birthday, so the girlfriend he just talked about was not qualified enough to bring him over. Wei Zong should be the only grandson of the old man, and besides, he has a good relationship with the old man, so he can be regarded as the protagonist of this birthday party. I got up early in the morning and went to the old house, and gave a gift to the old man in the red tang suit. The old man looked at the gift in Wei Zongying's hand, and was very happy in his heart, but he didn't say, "It's good that people come, what gift do you have?" Grandpa took advantage of the situation and asked him to stay tonight. Wei Kanjieying adjusted the pillows on the sofa to a comfortable position for him, and sat lazily on the sofa with an ugly posture. "I'm going to stay here, I'm going to fight with my dad again." Grandpa is his own grandpa, he waved his hand and promised him, "Then let your dad live outside today. Didn't he bring back all the daughters of that woman?" Wei Kong shouldn't be concerned, but he still heard what Lin Fang said. He heard that his father brought someone to find Lin Fang's father to ask for help. "He didn't bring anyone to you turn around in front of you? Can you show me the way?" Grandpa snorted, like a child, "I came here once, but was driven away by your grandma." Wei Kanjieying clasped his fists, "I feel the support from Comrade Wei Zhenlin and Ms. Mei Ruolin." Grandpa Wei Zhenlin asked back, "I support you so much, when will you come to the company to support Grandpa's hard work?" Wei Kanjieying pretended to be deaf, and the phone in his hand rang loudly. He just got up and walked towards the balcony with the phone, saying hello to his grandfather. "I'll answer the call." It was the modified car technician from the car factory who had been cooperating. After the call was connected, the person on the other end of the phone said, "Hey, I have dismantled all the usable parts of your car, Kong." Wei Kanjieying took the phone and went to the balcony, and hooked the sliding door with his feet to separate the surroundings from the atmosphere in the living room. He listened to the words on the phone, a little puzzled. Which one? The person on the other end of the phone was a little speechless. "At the beginning of this year, in February. Remember? The one you crashed on Zhuzhuo." "Oh." Wei Kanjieying remembered, thinking that he was not very interested in that car. Originally, he planned to scrap the car in Zhuzhuo, but the person on the other end of the phone said he would bring it back to save money, and said he would. "There are some working parts." The person on the other end of the phone continued, "The problem you mentioned last time was a problem with the ground wire. I fixed it for you. When will you try again?" Wei Zongying's attitude was a little perfunctory. "Let's talk about it, I have something to do today and I can't leave." Wei Zongying's family is rich, and Wei Zongying's father is in charge of the old man's birthday banquet. One of the biggest characteristics of rich people is that they don't want to socialize all the time. They all have an ability to turn a boring meeting into a business benefit. Wei Kong should have seen how his father's second secretary used an ordinary golf game to help his father win a huge order. Wei Zong should not be regarded as a literati, but he also doesn't like a group of beasts, dressed in whitewashed clothes, vain and false. He sat with Lin Fang, and Lin Fang asked about the last time he helped him break up. Wei Conjaying remembered Shi Yun. He also thought of the message that Shi Yun hadn't responded to. It will be more than half a month. It's quite a coincidence. Just as I thought about it, my phone vibrated, and it was the person who had disappeared for half a month. Shi Yun, I just finished the exam today. The author has something to say. Thanks to the little angels who voted for me or irrigated nutrient solution during 2022041923:43:262022050110:50:55 thanks to the little angel who cast the rocket launcher. 14. 5T5 legal wife, swan sailing. 1. Barren mountain, thanks to the little angels who threw the grenade. Ajiu, Kaihokyu, Geg2. Thanks to the little angels who threw the landmines. Dungska, Jingjinja, it's you, not you. 1. Thanks to the little angels of irrigation nutrient solution, M_20 bottles, current girlfriend PGT16 bottles, ZXZZ, H, go to the moon to steal carrots, durian love cheese 10 bottles, 248353118 bottles, Nicole 6 bottles, late winter, 5776175505 bottles, 17,773 bottles, Day, 2 bottles of Kyu, Who, how much is a box of cherries, Dungska, half of my heartbeat, juice sparkling water, 1 bottle of a fish, thank you very much for your support, I will continue to work hard. However, Wei Conjaying didn't know how to reply to her, he already found a new girlfriend. Although he is promiscuous, he has a bottom line. Don't step on 2 boats, eat from the bowl and look at the pot. After ignoring Shi Yun's message, Wei Zongying swiped his phone because the dinner was boring, clicked on Moments, the first one was Shi Yun's news. The time is 2 minutes ago. I have mental illness and infectious diseases. If I need it, I will pay for it privately. By the way, my roommate's ear, nose, and throat will be paid. The conscience price is 6 yuan, which can be a knife. Looking at this highly dangerous circle of friends, Wei Kong didn't know why the joke was hit, but he didn't give her a thumbs up, so he just swipe up this post. Lin Fang didn't know what he was laughing at, and was about to ask him what news he saw and smiled so happily, when his eyes flickered, he saw an incredible person. Lin Fang patted Wei Conjaying excitedly, put his hands in front of his mouth, and quietly reminded Wei Conjaying, at 3 o'clock, your father still has that woman. Hearing the sound, Wei Conjaying raised his head and looked in the direction of 3 o'clock. Beside the kind-faced middle-aged man was a woman of the same age as Wei Conjaying. 2 generations apart, a man and a woman, were toasting to the person at the next table. The good mood just now was gone for a moment. Lin Fang reminded him from the side, don't get excited, think about your grandpa, look at the security guard next to you, it's not suitable to lift the table today. Just after persuading Wei Kong not to get excited, Lin Fang immediately said in a low voice, 2 days ago, your father brought her to my father, saying that he wanted to send her to the civil aviation company through his relationship. In the end, the threshold was lowered. Her assessment is actually lower than others, the one toasted by your father is one of the directors of that company. Wei Conjaying chooses to endure, but when he thinks that when he was sent abroad after graduating from junior high school, his father didn't even send him to the airport. When he graduated from studying abroad for 3 years, his father still didn't know what he was doing. Boston or New York for high school. So, he couldn't hold back, kicked the leg of the chair next to him, and left the venue with a cigarette, cell phone, and car keys. Wei Conjaying's departure was eye-catching. Lin Fang was not easy to run, and his father would beat him if he ran away. He had no choice but to sit on the chair and watch Wei Kanjieying leave without looking back. Wei Kanjieying went to the house of his new girlfriend, and drove directly to the downstairs of her apartment without saying hello. He also knows the password. When she sent her home last time, she invited him to drink tea. Seeing his girlfriend's car parked downstairs, Wei Zongying stood under the moonlight and made several phone calls, but no one answered. Looking up at the lights in the house, he entered the code to open the door and entered. There was no one in the living room, but the lights were on. The bedroom door was also open, and there was no one on the bed. There are 2 pairs of shoes in the entrance, 1 pair of high heels and 1 pair of canvas shoes. Wei Kanjieying raised his feet and went over to compare the size of the pair of canvas shoes. They were much smaller than his own shoes, and they looked like girls' shoes. He heard the sound of water coming from the bathroom, and walked in without taking off his shoes. Amidst the sound of water, he heard 2 female voices. There are also familiar groans and buzzing sounds like bees. A woman is asking, "Do you love me?" One answer, "Love you." Wei Kanjieying pushed open the bathroom door and looked at the 2 girls who were hugging behind the glass door. One was rubbing the body of the other, but it was a pity that it was not the back, but the front. He met the eyes of one of them. The 2 people in the bathroom panicked when they noticed him appearing at the door. Wei Zongying didn't say anything, turned around and left expressionlessly. The footsteps going downstairs were fast, and Wei Zongying could hear her chasing down the steps, and kept calling his name. Walking downstairs, his girlfriend also caught up. Wei Kong should stand still in front of the car, it is useless to run away now. He is not an escapist and this matter should be addressed. In a straightforward opening, Wei Kanjieying asked her, "Same?" "Both." She lowered her head and said nothing. Wei Kanjieying continued, "Let's divide up." So this relationship that lasted less than half a month broke Wei Zongying's record for the fastest time to get away after breaking up. 2 extremely short sentences, less than half a minute. Faster than fast food, it should be said to be ready to eat. On the way back, the street lights were dappled by the leaves. The green trees on this road are phoenix trees, and after crossing the intersection, the trees on the street will turn into camphor trees. Wei Zongying kicked the accelerator and drove back to his own apartment. At the last intersection, he saw a road sign with white letters on a blue background. The road sign was fleeting, but his eyes still caught the white words on the road sign. Capital University Gangneung Campus. The barbecue stand on the side of the road was still open, and Wei Zong should have been distracted from observing the road conditions. He thought of the scene of seeing Shi Yun here for the first time. Taking advantage of the long traffic light, Wei Kanjieying took out his mobile phone and clicked on the text message he had ignored before. "Wei Kanjieying, finished the exam? Shall we have a meal together then?" After seeing Wei Kanjieying's break-up screen at his school that day, Shi Yun hadn't had time to think about how to start chatting with him and was about to prepare for the final exam. There are 4 people in the dormitory, because the majors are different, the time for the exam and the thickness of the review materials are also different. Sadness and joy are not the same. A roommate watched the week between 2 classes and whined that the teacher who set the test was not a man. Shi Yuan was still playing with her mobile phone while her eyebrows were burning. "Isn't the review time for a week not enough? You look at me and then at Shi Yun, how pitiful we are." The roommate who was named was Yuzuyu, and she was not convinced. "I have to write more papers than you, so it's just as miserable, okay? I'm also being arrested by my tutor every day as a coolie." The roommate was doing miserably there, but Shi Yun didn't respond. He wore headphones and took a tablet to do the questions and read the materials seriously. Yuzuya was too lazy to continue to compete with Shi Yuan, and pointed to her information, "Then you are under a lot of pressure to study, so you should hurry up and review. What kind of mobile phone?" Speaking of this, Shi Yuan was a little shy. She stood up and walked to the aisle between Yuzuyu's table and Shi Yun's table, the junior who has been chasing me for a month confessed to me after knowing that I broke up. Do you want me to promise? Yuzuyu held a negative attitude. This handover was too fast. Shi Yuan wanted to agree in her heart, but she wanted to ask someone else, and she wanted the same answer as she had in mind. Shi Yuan wore headphones to pretend to be deaf. Shi Yuan couldn't get the answer she wanted from Yuzuyu's mouth, and the two of them started a non-serious discussion on Shi Yuan broke up for a long time. Is it long enough to start the next relationship? The verbal battle didn't last long. Shi Yuan left the dormitory after answering a phone call, and Shi Yuan happened to get up to pour water. After taking off the earphones, I heard Yuzuyu, who was lying on the bed, calling her. Shi Yuan stood at the same spot with the hot water bottle in his hand, looking up at her, thinking that she was asking him to help deliver things. Yuzuyu is a gossip. She pointed to the door, ask for our opinion, but all the notes on the phone were changed to dear. Shi Yuan didn't care about this, and didn't want to talk too much, so he just shook his head to express that he didn't know. Before he reached the door of the dormitory with the hot water bottle, he heard his roommate lying on the bed expressing emotion, but also sarcasm. It's a skill for a person to move on so quickly. When Shi Yuan walked out of the door, thinking of Yuzuyu's words, he lowered his eyes. Yeah, it would be nice to be able to move on quickly. After the exam month, the thesis Shi Yuan handed over to his tutor was also praised. After she and Shi Yuan finished the exam, the roommate went back 2 days ago because of the problems in the major. Now it's just the two of them in the dormitory. As soon as Shi Yuan finished the exam, she had to catch up on sleep, and before she caught up, she didn't forget to make a phone call with her new boyfriend who had been neglected for several days. Shi Yuan was not in a hurry to sleep, and recleaned the dormitory that hadn't been cleaned carefully because of the exam. This was probably her cleanliness. While cleaning, I found 2 textbooks and helped Shi Yuan sell the ear, nose, and throat. It was a schoolgirl who contacted her to buy books. Among all the messages, she also saw the message that Wei Kanjiaying sent her a long time ago. She replied that she had just finished the exam by herself, and it took a long time before she received his message, asking her if she wanted to have dinner together, saying that it was to return her favor. After Shi Yuan packed up the books the junior needed, he waited in the dormitory for the junior to pick them up. Shi Yuan came back to catch up on sleep after finishing her last class yesterday, and she didn't wake up until noon the next day. She had slept for a long time, but she still didn't have the energy. Shi Yuan found her mobile phone from under the pillow, looked at the time, poked her head out from the mosquito net, and saw that the 2 beds opposite were empty. Shi Yuan's eyelids were heavy, and she saw the only person in the dormitory. She just woke up, her voice was still a little hoarse, and she called out to that person, Shi Yuan. Shi Yuan was putting on makeup. When she heard Shi Yuan calling her, she raised her head. What's wrong? Have you put on makeup? Shi Yuan's eyes lit up after seeing the eyeshadow palette and eyeshadow brush in her hand. Do you have a date today? Not only did I put on makeup, but today I didn't wear slacks and 3 basic short sleeves that cost 100 yuan as usual in class. The clothes looked simple but exquisite, and the seemingly inconspicuous accessories were all expensive. Curled her hair, wore a skirt with accessories, and put on makeup. Seeing that she didn't say anything else, Shi Yuan continued to put on makeup. I have to go out at 4 o'clock. Today, a schoolgirl said that she would come to pick up the book. If I'm not here later, you can give it to me. Just put it on my desk. Come on, the money has already been paid for the 3 books under the tissue box. Shi Yuan snorted, a little perfunctory. She was even more curious about the gossip about who Shi Yuan dated today. With whom? The one in the upper grade? The one in the lower grade? This one was 1.8 meters last time? Or the one who played basketball? Who is it? The alarm clock on the phone rang, and Shi Yuan turned off the ringer. Neither of them. No one will give up easily on the study of gossip and eating melons. Could it be that boy you like that you grew up with? What's his name? Hisui? But didn't you say that he was in love last time? When Shi Yun heard the name Hisui, she froze for a moment, but she quickly covered up the moment of stupor. Put the eyeshadow brush back into the makeup brush storage tube, and still say the same sentence, it's not him. Always lying on the bed and having a headache, Shi Yuan climbed down from the upper bunk. It's okay, don't ask who you are, anyway, bravely starting a new relationship is worthy of encouragement. Shi Yuan went to the bathroom to wash up, and there was a lot of ding ding dong dong. Shi Yun put on lipstick and looked at the time on the phone. It was almost time. After spraying on the last step of perfume, Shi Yun took the bag and went out the door. The phone in her hand vibrated just as the door opened, and she received a new message. Wei Kanjieying, here we are. Shi Yun replied with the word yes. Cutting out from the chat dialog box, she saw a person who had sent her a message 2 months ago at the bottom of the list. The note is Hisui. Hisui, my mother didn't mean that, don't worry about it. She never responded to that message. The author has something to say, can I have a collection? There are small red envelopes in the comments of these chapters, which will not be updated for the time being. After entering V, I will stabilize the daily update of 6,000. Thanks to the little angels who voted for me or irrigated nutrient solution during 2022-050-50-55-202-2050310:25:47. Thanks to the little angel who threw the landmine, it's you, not you. 1. Thanks to the little angel of irrigation nutrient solution, 577617505 bottles, thank you very much for your support. I will continue to work hard. She walked out with her mobile phone. It was a bit hot and humid, and the natural wind was scorching. As soon as he looked up, he saw a conspicuous car parked not far away. It was different from the car he drove to school last time. This time it was Miami blue, with a red and black interior, and a semi-convertible car. He also equipped it with an anti-roll bar and changed the color. The car logo is added to the seat to meet the needs of the co-pilot girl to take selfies. There was a girl standing next to the car. He didn't seem to be afraid of deducting points, so he parked next to the no parking sign on the side of the road. Holding the steering wheel with one hand, the elbow of the other arm rests on the door. Sitting in the driver's seat wearing sunglasses, he wears a protective sleeve on his left arm, but not on his right arm. The sun is very hot. Although it is very sunny, but with the convertible, it is always forced to be full. He was talking to the people beside the car, and when he saw Shi Yun, he raised his hand and waved to her. The movement of waving caused the girl standing by the car to turn around, and Shi Yun recognized that girl as the girl who was broken up that day and squatted opposite the cafeteria crying. Wei Kanjieying saw Shi Yun approaching not far away, and he was running out of patience with this good friend's ex-girlfriend in front of him. I'm not Yuelao. After leaving this sentence, the girl walked away when Shi Yun was about to approach. Wei Kong should see her go around the front of the car and walk out of the passenger door. She was dressed differently from the first time he met her, not too bright colors, denim skirt with shirt, and a pair of white canvas shoes. Wei Kanjieying waited for her to get in the car and put on her seat belt, then turned on the ignition with her left hand and shifted gear with her right hand. It's still a little awkward for two people who are only meeting each other for the third time. But most of the people roaming in Fenjiaocheng have the experience of flirting with strange girls. Wei Kanjieying slowly increased the speed of the car, but soon stopped at the intersection with the red light on, turned his head and looked at the co-pilot through the sunglasses. The person watching the co-pilot squinted because of the glare of the sun shining directly into the car. He reached out and pressed the button in the center console to close the roof. At the hottest time in June, the sun shows no sign of setting at 4 o'clock. He didn't know which one to press among the many control buttons, and the car became air-conditioned. In the confined space, the dry heat disappeared little by little. When the green light came on, Wei Zongying withdrew the peripheral vision that fell on her, and broke the silence in the car. I'll decide the location. Shi Yun had no objection. It seems troublesome to change gears at start and stop, but it is very easy for him to drive a car with manual transmission. He didn't drive to a large business district in the capital, but the consumption level near the business district he went to was not low. Not far away, there is a screen playing the latest commercial blockbuster of a certain luxury brand this season outside a building with more than 30 floors. There was some traffic jam in the evening rush hour on the road, and it was not easy to get dark in the capital in June. After Wei Kanjiying got off the car, he stood by the car and waited for her. He didn't make an appointment, so he took her directly to the waiter standing at the door, and told the waiter her name. That name was not his. The waiter took him to the second floor. A not so big box. The decoration is Wong Kar-wai's style. The decoration is designed to hide the sound, and the background music playing in the store does not know where it comes from. After the prelude was over and the vocals came out, Shi Yun recognized it was Miriam Young's Girl's Prayer. Eloped with him in the car along the way and fell in love. No matter how tight you are, you won't let go. Pray that there are no obstacles on the way. Turn a happy journey into a sad one. The green light passed twice in a row. Love him for a few more kilometers. When this light turns red, we will leave. I live and die by luck. I pray that heaven and earth will spare a pair of lovers. Just when the song was about to reach its climax, the waiter handed Shi Yun the menu, drawing her attention back to the meal from the song. When she took the menu, the person opposite had already flipped through it. Shi Yun flipped through it for a while, and finally hesitated between the two after-dinner desserts. One was fruit and the other was cake. The waiter was still standing by and waiting for her. She was embarrassed but couldn't get tangled up. Ordering both is a waste of food. Wei Kanjiying had already ordered, watching her shake her head slightly, and looking at the two types of desserts listed on the two pieces of paper, he could see Shi Yun's entanglement. He didn't give her any advice, but he didn't let her continue to struggle. Wei Kanjiying thought of the first time he met her. She criticized him for wasting food, thought for a while and said, "Each dish is not a lot, you can order more." So the waiter wrote down both dishes, and walked out of the box with the two menus under his arm. Miriam Young's Girl's Prayer has already finished playing. He is sitting in front of the wall designed with random collage and graffiti, and the yellow light shines on the wall. The yellow-toned light cast his image on the wall, but the graffiti was messy and dirty, and the shadow couldn't be seen clearly. When looking at his shadow, they accidentally looked at each other. When Shi Yun met his gaze, he quickly looked away. This action instead made Wei Zongying smile. At that time, he attributed Shi Yun's move to ignorance of the world, and it was a long time later that he realized that he was wrong. Wei Kanjiying started the chat and talked about his situation. He has been a native of the capital for several generations, and he failed his ancestors and lived abroad for several years. He is 25 years old, 2 years older than Shi Yun, and he is a Sagittarius. After learning that Shi Yun was 23 years old this year, he calculated the time in his mind. At this age, he should be busy with graduation defense at this time, but she still has a final exam. He asked, "Postgraduate?" Shi Yun nodded, "Study medicine." She has been very smart since she was a child, just like the students in the whole capital who started fighting with bayonets since they were young. She also took various supplementary classes and various interest classes when she was young. She burned down several apartments in second-tier cities during the cram school, but she never spent a penny on tuition. When others were throwing money at the learning summer camp for the Capital 5, she took the olive branch thrown to her by the school and compared which school gave her more scholarships. The possibility of eating with unfamiliar people is basically zero. But he had a good sense of proportion, and when the dishes were served, he stopped talking. Silence makes people feel relaxed at this time. The sterilized hot towel handed over by the waiter when entering the room was already cold, and it was placed unevenly on a white porcelain plate. Shi Yun ate the food in small bites. The food was very good. At least it suits Shi Yun's taste. Each dish does not have a tangy aroma, but after the entrance, the taste buds explode. The sense of taste makes up for the part that is not obtained by the sense of smell at this time. Shi Yun lowered his eyes, and most of his eyes fell on the table. The person opposite him helped the waiter adjust the plate from time to time, and the sleeve on his left arm was a bit eye-catching. Especially since he only wears one protective sleeve, which is definitely not used for sun protection. The sleeves are all black, without any pattern on it, only a line of white English words, which is probably the brand's logo. Wei Kanjieying saw her eyes fall on his sleeve from time to time, and he also took a look. He explained, "There is a scar on the arm." As he said that, Wei Kanjieying thought of her saying that she was studying medicine, so he took off the sleeves, looked at her with a smile, and asked, "Look." As he spoke, he stretched out his arm, and the molecules moved, and Shi Yun smelled the perfume on his body. Woody aroma with a touch of smoky pine in the aftertaste. There is a little bit of sweetness, which misleads the sense of smell, so that people ignore the coldness created by the sweetness. There is a scar about 7 centimeters on his arm. The location of the scar is on the inner forearm. Shi Yun looked at the scar on his arm, holding his wrist with a cold hand, and observed it closely. There was a big difference between the temperature of her fingertips and the temperature of his arm. This caused the touch of her fingertips to be particularly noticeable on her own arm. The wound was sutured with staples. She looked at the scar left on the arm, which might be due to his physical problem. The wound recovered very well, and the scar was also light, much better than many centipede types with hypertrophic scars. What's wrong? At the beginning of the year, the bone here was accidentally broken, and I had an operation. Wei Kanjieying withdrew his arm and put on the sleeve that had faded to his wrist. In the second half of the dinner, he started talking a little too much. Consciously or unintentionally mentioned the scene of meeting her for the first time. The way to get someone to like you is to make her realize that you have helped her. When he could get it, he didn't take advantage of her, kept a distance from her, and put his first impression in the camp of good people. It's like executing tactics, one loop after another. He was not in a hurry to collect the net and check the results, but reminded the waiter that the dessert after the meal was ready to serve. The dinner ended around 7 o'clock. It was completely dark outside, and it was windy but still felt stuffy. When walking to the parking lot, a staff member wearing a Kumaman doll costume passing by a Japanese grocery store handed out leaflets to passers-by. A leaflet was handed over to Shi Yun. She took the leaflet without reading it, nor did she directly throw it into the trash can not far away. It was Wei Kanjieying who saw it, and he asked, "If you want to eat, we'll come to eat next time. You've finished the exam, so you should have plenty of time, right?" Because of his words, Shi Yun subconsciously turned his face away and raised his head to look at the person next to him. He looked at himself when he spoke just now. The four eyes are facing each other. Wei Kanjieying found that the unexplained emotions in her eyes were very complicated. Like a fish biting the hook and trying to struggle, or like a lamb that has been exhausted by the trap and chooses to give up. When he began to suspect that she did not suffer from the Scheherazade complex, she seemed to bite the bait. Okay. His car is a good means of transportation for night drives. The wind hit the front fender, smashing it apart. It scattered around, blowing Shi Yun's hair. Even if he raised his hand and pinned all his hair behind his ears, within a second he was dragged by the wind and flew into the air. The first-order moonlight shone in the city amidst the orange street lights. Shi Yun simply tied his hair with the rubber band on his wrist and ignored the fluttering short hair and undulating cuffs. Wei Zongying's car is a manual transmission. All his cars are manual transmission. Manual transmission can play the greatest charm of the car. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed Shi Yun's small movements of stroking his hair, and slowly slowed down, and adjusted the gear several times. After the speed of the car dropped to the speed that allowed the roof to be closed during driving, he closed the roof and turned on the air conditioner distractedly. Her hair was no longer fluttering, her sleeves were resting, and even the Japanese material leaflet she was holding in her hand was quiet. The road back to the Gangneung campus of Capital University is the road that passes the East Ring Elevated Road. The shopping mall under the elevated road has been built almost from the outside. She can be counted as a little bit watching the shopping mall from scratch. When he drove outside the dormitory area, Shi-yoon mentioned that he could pull over and park. He stepped on the brake lightly, but he didn't stop the car completely. You want to buy something outside? Shi-yoon understood what he meant and wanted to send herself downstairs to the dormitory. She didn't say anything else, but showed him the way. Then you drive straight ahead, just go the same way as when you came last time. Originally, Shi-yoon's major was one of the last ones in the school who passed the exam. Students of many other majors have already gone home for the summer vacation. There used to be quite a few people strolling around, but now there are not many. Wei Zongying drove the car to the place where he met Shi-yoon at school last time according to his memory. The co-pilot looked sideways out of the car window, fiddling with the leaflet of Japanese materials in his hand. Soon to reach the destination, Shi-yoon turned his head. Which department is your ex-girlfriend from? Wei Kanjaeying was taken aback for a moment, but soon realized that what he was thinking in his head was not the same person Shi-yoon was talking about. He explained, "That's my childhood girlfriend. Break up with Fa Zile? I always feel that the credibility is not very high." After Shi-yoon waited for the car to stop, he stretched out his hand to unfasten his seat belt, and joked a little eccentrically, "You have a wide range of businesses." Wei Kanjaeying pretended not to understand, and smiled, happy to help others. Shi-yoon thought of the last time he sent his drunken self to the police station, and agreed, "I have a say in this, and I agree." Shi-yoon responded with his laughter. "The author has something to say, eloped with him in the car along the way and fell in love. No matter how tight you are, you won't let go. Pray that there are no obstacles on the way. Turn a happy journey into a sad one. The green light passed twice in a row. Love him for a few more kilometers. When this light turns red, we will leave. I live and die by luck. I pray that heaven and earth will spare a pair of lovers." Miriam Young, A Maiden's Prayer. Thanks to the little angels who voted for me or irrigated nutrient solution during 2022050310:25:47 2022050500:19:16. Thanks to the little angel who threw the grenade, Aju 2, 5T5's legal wife 1. Thanks to the little angel who threw the landmine, Jing Jing, 5T5's legal wife, is you not you. Old Time, Winter G, a string of garbled codes. Thanks to the little angels of the irrigation nutrient solution, 90 bottles of Jongkia, 20 bottles of Dongji, 3 bottles of Gao Gaobus, 2 bottles at the end of winter. Thank you very much for your support. I will continue to work hard. It was sweltering outside the car, and June was getting darker. The summer insects were hiding in the greenery and singing. After Shi-yoon got out of the car, his body was covered in thin sweat. Immediately, he closed the car door, and walked slowly into the night. The headlights behind her never disappeared, her figure was cast on the road, and the light and shadow interacted. Shi-yoon never looked back and kept walking forward. She ran into Shi-yoon downstairs in the dormitory. Standing in front of her should be her new boyfriend. She saw Shi-yoon, who came back, looked at her and looked behind her curiously. It's a pity that it's hard to see clearly what car Shi-yoon got off in the night. After the two greeted each other, Shi-yoon walked straight into the dormitory. Seeing the figure outside the front windshield who hadn't looked back disappear into his sight, Wei Zongying also turned the front of the car and left. The sound of the vehicle engine seemed to say, "I'm very expensive." When Shi-yoon returned to the dormitory, he saw that Shi-yoon had made a mess of the dormitory. On the ground were her belongings and some luggage that she was going to take home. She had some obsessive-compulsive disorder, but she didn't want to help Shi-yoon tidy up, so she went to wash up directly. After taking a bath, she was relaxed and the air conditioner was on. She found that the 3 books ordered by the school the table had not been taken away. Wiping her hair with a towel, Shi-yoon took out her mobile phone from her bag, and wanted to find the school girl who had privately chatted with her about buying books on WeChat. Click on the list, the top message is Wei Zongying. Wei Kanjieying, you are so cruel, you don't even look back. Slightly complaining words. Shi Yun cut out from the chat interface with him, and continued to search for the dialogue with that school girl. Before the organized words were sent out, there was the sound of the door opening in the dormitory. Shi Yuan is back. As soon as Shi Yuan entered the room, she saw Shi Yun after taking a shower. The dormitory smelled of fragrant shower gel. Shi Yun picked up the book on the table. Didn't that school girl come to get it? With a shopping bag hanging on her wrist, Shi Yuan closed the door with her foot. I didn't come. Shi Yun continued to send messages to the schoolgirl who wanted to sell books. Shi Yuan walked into the house and stopped when she passed by Shi Yun. Their dormitory has a bed and desk layout, and next to the desk is a personal wardrobe and stairs. Shi Yuan leaned against Shi Yun's wardrobe door, with a gossip expression. Who is that person who brought you back today? Shi Yun didn't want to answer her question, so he said no one perfunctorily, and gestured to open the wardrobe door, motioning her to go away. Seeing Shi Yun's reluctance to answer, Shi Yuan flattened her lips. The car that man drives is quite expensive. Shi Yun didn't answer her question, but instead asked, are you going home tomorrow? Then pack up your things quickly. She and Shi Yuan are not good friends. They didn't meet each other when they were undergraduates. Later, after graduation, they were divided into dormitories again. In the first dormitory, there were 4 people and 3 majors. Shi Yuan naturally got closer to the same major as her. Shi Yun. Seeing that Shi Yun couldn't ask anything, Shi Yuan went to take a bath after eating the ice cream. There will be a class meeting the next day, and after the class meeting, you can go on summer vacation. At the class meeting at 9:30 in the morning, Shi Yuan got up early and started to pack her luggage. Shi Yun was woken up by the movement of packing, and Shi Yuan asked her to borrow a storage bag for the quilt and a compressor to pump air. After Shi Yun found it out from the closet and handed it to her, he took the toiletries to wash up. After taking a leisurely shower, she made a cup of cereal while eating breakfast while watching the news this morning. Shi Yuan sat on the compressed quilt. She was a little tired from tidying up. Seeing Shi Yun's leisurely look, he asked her, aren't you packing up? Shi Yun dug into the oatmeal with a spoon, focusing on the news, yet. While cleaning up, Shi Yuan asked, are you not going home this summer vacation? Shi Yun has been home a handful of times in the past few years. He is obviously a native of the capital, but he doesn't go home as often as his roommate from out of town, and he seldom calls home. She is actually a family lover, and she doesn't yearn for the outside world so much. It's just that her mother has passed away in a car accident, and she has no need to go home. After the class meeting, Shi Yuan dragged her suitcase and left. Shi Yun was the only one in the dormitory, and she didn't feel lonely. Maybe I don't get along much with my roommates, so it's nice to have one person to enjoy the time in the dormitory. There is not a long holiday this summer, but Shi Yun is either in the library or in the dormitory. The dormitory aunts take turns, and every time they change to another aunt, Shi Yun will ask when she sees that she hasn't returned home during the summer vacation, little girl, aren't you going back during the summer vacation? Her answer remained the same, just one word, yes. Just when Shi Yun was about to drown in the literature, Wei Zongying's news came. Ask her if she is going to eat Japanese food. When he sent Shi Yun a short message to eat Japanese food, he was at the car factory. Wei Kanjieying spent the whole afternoon here today, but he didn't put in much effort. After communicating with the technician, he lazily leaned on the sofa in the garage, with the smell of engine oil on his nose. Not far away, the sound of tinkling maintenance came and went, and a person in an operation suit in front of the operating table looked at the finished product and let out a long sigh of relief. The sleeveless vest under the work suit was already drenched with sweat. Cheng Ji exhausted his energy rapidly due to the intense concentration and the sweltering heat. His goggles fogged up, and even turning on the air conditioner didn't help much. After installing the bolt inclination sensor in the gun, Cheng Ji called Wei Zongying to come over. Okay. As he said that, he couldn't wait to take off his operating suit, which was covered in sweat. Wei Conjaying on the sofa got up and looked at the car in front of Cheng Ji. Many of the parts on it were dismantled from another wrecked car of his. Cheng Ji said to him while taking off his operating clothes, "These parts can also save you this amount." His hands covered in engine oil looked a little dirty. Wei Conjaying looked at the numbers compared by his hands. He stood beside the motorcycle, and squeezed the clutch and front brake casually. Hearing Cheng Ji's words, he just smiled sarcastically. The cost of transporting the car back was almost the same price. As he took off his operating clothes, Wei Conjaying could smell a smell of sweat. He just frowned, turned his head, and held his breath. "Okay, that's it. I'll go first." As he spoke, he went to the sofa to pick up his mobile phone, and when his back was facing Cheng Ji, Wei Conjaying put his finger under his nose. He didn't know that this action was seen by the person who was behind him. Wei Conjaying picked up his mobile phone and walked towards the door. Before leaving, he said, "Look at the cost this time. After you've calculated it, send me a WeChat message. I'll leave first." When we came out of the depot, it was already dark outside. He hadn't reached the parking place when his phone rang. It was her reply after she asked Shi-Yun if she wanted to eat Japanese food. She didn't say no. Ask him the exact time. Wei Conjaying stood where he was and replied to her message. The summer in the capital in July was so hot that people felt chest tightness and shortness of breath. He saw a taxi parked at the gate of the depot, and a girl got out of the car with a lunch box in her hand. After walking towards him, his eyes paused on him for a few seconds. When the eyes met, the person gave him a blank look. Without stopping, walked straight towards the depot. Wei Kong should remember that it seemed to be Cheng Ji's girlfriend. Shi-Yun passed off the skirt he wore the last time he saw him, and replaced it with a new set including accessories. There is still enough time. She took out Wei Zongying's coat from the closet, found another paper bag, folded the coat and put it inside. The phone on the table rang. He arrived earlier than the appointed time. This time he also passed the last car and changed to another one. The three-pointed star emblem on the front face is particularly conspicuous. Sunlight fell through the gaps between the clouds, and the cats in the school slept under the shade of the trees, seemingly unafraid of the chirping of cicadas. He was a little surprised when he saw the paper bag in Shi-Yun's hand. He forgot about the coat, put the paper bag in the back seat, waited for Shi-Yun to fasten his seat belt and started the car. While waiting for Shi-Yun, Wei Zongying saw a dormitory balcony, and there was nothing hanging outside to dry. It is already the time of summer vacation, and there are no students except the janitor. "Aren't you going home during the summer vacation?" Wei Kong should remember the last time she said that she had finished the exam. "Won't your tutor give you a vacation?" Shi-Yun, "No, I simply don't want to go back." Wei Conjaying didn't say anything after listening, and he is not a person who is willing to live with his parents. When he reached the traffic light intersection, he was lucky enough to catch a green light, and Shi-Yun saw the Japanese grocery store leaflet that was still stuffed beside the passenger door. "There are also creases on it that I made when I was bored last time." He was driving the car, looking at the front of the car. "It's fine if you don't go back, you can continue to have dinner with me during the summer vacation." Shi-Yun took out the leaflet of the Japanese food store, looked at the words on the leaflet, read all the words, but none of them entered his mind. "Are you short of food?" Holding the steering wheel, he slowly slowed down because of the countdown to the green light visible at an intersection ahead, and adjusted the gear. "Need, do you want to accompany me?" Wei Conjaying deliberately elongated the sound of the word missing, and while the car stopped, he turned to look at the co-pilot, waiting for her answer. Shi-Yun's answer was ambiguous, neither agreeing nor refusing. But Wei Kong should know that next time he invites her out for dinner, she will come. One is his self-confidence, and the other is some emotions that Shi-yun didn't show but couldn't hide. He believed that Shi-yun liked him. The Japanese grocery store is still in the last business district. After the summer vacation, there are always more cars on the street than before. When they arrived at the Japanese food store, there were already people queuing up at the entrance of the Japanese food store. From afar, Shi-yun saw a familiar figure among the dozen or so people. It's Hisui. Next to him stood a girl who was about the same age as them, wearing a chiffon dress and canvas shoes. The girl next door. It is indeed his style that he has always liked. The two of them didn't seem to be afraid of the heat, arm in arm, whispering intimately. After Wei Zongying got off the car, he went around the front of the car and walked to the side of Shi-yun, who was standing there in a daze. Following her gaze, he could only see the queue in front of the Japanese grocery store. Seeing Shi-yun's uneasy expression, Wei Kanjiang asked tentatively, "You don't want to eat?" She hummed. The excuse Shi-yun made was that there were too many people queuing up and that she forgot to take off her shoes in this restaurant. She wore 2 mandarin duck-colored socks that she had put together casually today. The excuses are far-fetched, and a little clumsy. But Wei Zongying's self-righteousness was magnified by the preconceived idea of putting himself in the position of a hunter early in the morning. He thought that everything he had seen about Shi-yun's lies was his cleverness. They changed a store, Wei Kong shouldn't care. The two went to a Cantonese restaurant temporarily. Wei Kong should be a little busy when eating. The phone keeps ringing, one is Lin Fang, asking if he wants to play together at night, and the other is the car factory calling him, saying that the car is ready for a test run. He refused, saying that he had a date today. After Shi-yun sat across from her and watched him perfunctorily hang up the two people's phone calls, she fiddled with the roast goose on the plate with a fork until the goose's own oil smeared the entire surface of the plate. Wei Kanjiang put down his mobile phone, saw her dish painting, and used his serving chopsticks to pick up another dish for her. One is my friend who has something to do with me, and the other is an employee of the car factory. My car is always in it's there for refitting and maintenance. He just informed me that I can go for a test run. Shi-yun thought it was the car he was driving before, and didn't think much about it. Where is it broken? There wasn't much time in between, and Shi-yun didn't think there was anything wrong with the car last time. He thought it was a small bump. After asking himself, Wei Zong should not speak immediately. Shi-yun picked up the dish he had picked up for himself with a fork, and just put it in his mouth without chewing carefully. He sat across the dining table, folded the wet towel in his hand, and held her wrist across the not sow-eyed table. Turned her arm gently, and wiped off the sauce she didn't know when it was stained with the corner of the wet towel. Interested? If you are free tomorrow, do you want to go and have a look? The author has something to say, the socks are the focus. I will take the exam later. Have you received all the small red envelopes in the message? Quickly check the article homepage to see if this book has been favorited. Thanks to the little angels who voted for me or irrigated nutrient solution during 2022-0500:19:16-2022-5050522:24:53. Thanks to the little angel who threw the grenade, 5T51 legal wife. Thanks to the little angel who threw the landmine, it's you, not you. 1 solar maintenance. Thanks to the little angels who irrigate the nutrient solution, 6 bottles of fat people who don't like meat, 5 bottles of Zhong Yuji. Thank you very much for your support, I will continue to work hard. After eating, Wei Zongying sent Shi-yun downstairs to the dormitory as usual. The car lights kept shining on the road in front of her from behind, and her shadow was stretched out in the car lights. There were moths and small flying insects lingering in the light, and she kept going as before, without looking back. A person can relax a little in the dormitory, and she can just walk around with bare legs in a suspender top. Wei Kanjiang will be home soon. When he received the message that he was safe, Shi-yun was washing clothes on the balcony wrapped in a bath towel. His hands were full of water and foam, and he was not in a hurry to reply. After drying her clothes against the heat of the summer night, she returned to the air-conditioned room. However, while drying the clothes, there was not only a message from Wei Kanjiaying on her phone, but also a new message from someone who sent her a message 2 months ago. Hisui, I seem to have seen you in Huijin Plaza today. Am I seeing the wrong person? Is that you? Hisui, why did you turn around and leave without saying hello? Damn, aren't you still angry because I didn't allow you to steal mulberries last time? Shi Yun still didn't reply to him this time, but returned to the message list and clicked on Wei Zongying's dialog box. He explained that tomorrow is the same time and place. Shi Yun simply replied with the word yes. From that day on, the contact between Shi Yun and Wei Zongying became frequent. He showed Shi Yun his life and took her to the car factory he always went to. Showing a girl her life is a brilliant move to pursue. He uses it with proficiency. Shi Yun followed him into a building with an industrial-style decoration, and what came to his nostrils was the smell of auto repair engine oil and the pungent smell of welding. Just as she was holding her breath and walking in, he took a mask for her from nowhere. After wearing the mask, some smells can still be smelled. The exterior is decorated in an industrial style, but the interior is no different from an ordinary car factory. There is motor oil on the concrete floor that cannot be washed off no matter what. All kinds of machines and parts are placed on the operating table. They entered through the side door, and a group of people in uniforms were sitting and smoking in the car wash area. They looked familiar to Wei Kanjiaying. An inch first took a cigarette out of his pocket, and made a gesture to give it to Wei Kanjiaying. When passing the cigarette, he saw Shi Yun who was following Wei Kanjiaying, and his eyes were jokingly sized up. The reason is quite simple, she is not the first one. The girl who was brought over by Wei Kanjiaying. Wei Kong should not have asked for his cigarettes, and teased the man, "Are you lazy?" The man was a little flattering, and his tone was a bit weird. Cheng Ji didn't work hard. "Brother, if you want to change the car, you can come to me next time. The last time I saw the maintenance details he sent you, I almost wrote greedy on it." Wei Kanjiaying didn't answer, but just said perfunctorily, "He's inside, right? I have something to do with him, so you can rest." Then she turned her head and whispered to Shi Yun, "Let's go." Shi Yun followed Wei Zongying. He kicked a few tripping wires aside, telling her to be careful when walking. She was led to walk a certain distance, and a shirtless man with earphones was squatting next to a motorcycle that had been dismantled to its skeleton. Wei Kanjiaying called him from behind. The man probably thought he was hallucinating, but after taking off the earphones, he turned his head and looked back, and found that there was someone behind him. He was a little surprised. "Are you here?" Wei Kong should introduce her to Cheng Ji who always changed cars with him in the depot, and he reached out to pick up a coat with the depot logo on the shelf and threw it to Cheng Ji. Cheng Ji didn't linger when he saw Shi Yun, but nodded towards her, then put down the things in his hands, caught the clothes in Wei Kanjiaying's hands, and put them on. Wei Kong put his hands on the handlebars of the motorcycle that had been dismantled to only one frame, telling Cheng Ji not to mind that they continued to work on the motorcycle. Cheng Ji pointed to the rest area before putting on the earphones. "The key is over there." The car key is set on a ring, and a small tag is attached to the ring to distinguish the key, with Wei Zongying's name written on it. Wei Kanjiaying walked over, bent slightly, fished out his hand, and picked up the key. It's useless for a girl to explain engine knowledge that she doesn't understand at all. It's like giving girls gifts on various festivals, but they give them some strangely colored lipsticks or watercolor pencil boxes that are more colorful than elementary school students. Rich eyeshadow palette. All useless waste operations. Instead of telling Shi Yun about this, it's better to take someone for a walk. Wei Kanjiaying looked at the person wearing the mask and asked her, "Have you ever ridden a motorcycle?" She shook her head. Wei Kanjiaying put his fingers into the keychain and turned the key, "Take you for a ride." Instead of taking the key and leading her into the car and unscrewing the accelerator, he found a set of protective gear for her. Still pink wrist and knee pads. Wei Kanjiaying helped her dress up one by one, and finally the helmet. Holding the helmet with one hand went around the back of her head and released the shark clips that held her hair. Pin Shi Yun's hair on both sides behind her ears with her little finger, and then help her put on the helmet. Shi Yun felt like a big head doll, flipping up the goggles on the front of the helmet with extremely uncoordinated hands. After Wei Kanjiaying finished dressing her, he quickly put on the protective gear and led the way. Looking at her like a cat wearing shoes for the first time, the protective gear seemed to seal her joints. Wei Kanjiaying saw her walking happily, threw the key into the helmet, and freed one hand to hold her. The palm of the hand stretched out towards him was very broad, because he had calluses on his palm from playing with the car, and the color of the calluses was different from the original skin color of his palm. Shi Yun hesitated for a moment and stretched out his hand, his fingertips brushed against his palm, and in the next second his 5 fingers were wrapped. It was obviously summer, but there was no sweat on his palms. He comes here a lot, so he knows where his car is normally parked. Leading Shi Yun to the back of the depot, he took a step forward and stopped. Shi Yun followed him and saw that there were not many cars. After passing by several cars, they finally stopped in front of a black motorcycle. It's the kind of car that would go to the suburbs to blow up the roads in the middle of the night because the capital banned it. The body paint is mainly black, and the embellished color is some fluorescent green. He took the car keys out of the helmet and put the helmet on casually. After getting in the car, he patted the back seat, experienced different means of transportation. For two-wheeled vehicles, the most used one was the back seat of a bicycle. At that time, Hisui bought a new bicycle and took her with her. She sat on the back seat and ate ice cream, but because of the car coming out of the corner, they accidentally fell, and Shi Yun's chin, elbows and knees were all broken. But the ice cream was unscathed. In the end, he sat on the ground eating ice cream and waited for Hisui's brother to come and carry Shi Yun home with his knee broken. After that, Shi Yun felt somewhat psychologically shadowed. Listening to the sound of the refitted engine, Shi Yun couldn't help feeling nervous. The height of the car is longer than her legs. Wei Kong should be able to support the car with his legs, but it is still a bit difficult for her to get on the car. Holding his shoulders, he managed to get up. Shi Yun's knee touched his side. He put down the windshield, and just about to turn the accelerator, he turned around suddenly and looked at Shi Yun through the glass of the windshield. The small half of the face exposed in sight. Her distinctive eyebrows and eyes became the only protagonist in the small half of her face that was revealed at this moment. Shi Yun didn't understand why he turned around suddenly. The next second, he raised his hand and put down the visor on the helmet she was wearing. I thought it was about to start, but the engine just roared with the twist of the accelerator, and then stopped again. Shi Yun thought there was something wrong with the car, but he turned his head again. Faintly seemed to hear him talking. Shi Yun leaned over and pressed his body against his back, but when she was unprepared, the car slammed forward. A short exclamation sounded from Shi Yun's helmet, and she instinctively hugged the person in front of her. The wind blew across her body. The part of the hair that was not covered by the helmet was flying around, and the wind poured into his short sleeves, blowing the clothes, but when Shi Yun hugged him, she squeezed the wind out of his clothes, and in the end only the sleeves moved. She always had a feeling of being thrown out, and her arms were tightly around him. Feeling the hardness and heat of the body through the fabric, Shi Yun hugged her tightly. Wei Kanjiaying sensed the sudden tightening of the arms around his waist, and with a smile on his face, he twisted the accelerator forcefully. The speed of the car increased all of a sudden, and the people behind me felt stiff. Unfortunately, through the helmet, he couldn't hear her voice. The feeling of sudden acceleration in a short distance seems to really throw the soul out of the body. When cornering, she faced the pressure bend, and her heart was about to jump out of her throat. She was so afraid that she would fall that she could not close her eyes tightly in the end. But when her body got used to the feeling of pushing her back, she got used to that stimulating feeling, but she suddenly felt her heart slow down. Something that has been suppressed in the body for many years seems to break out of the ground, and then be left behind in the high-speed driving. Throw away the things that have been dragging you down all year round. After getting used to the strong stimulation, the body relaxes instead. The wharf was out of service, the central ring exploded, and the sky rained stars, smashing potholes on the ground. She's going to lie in the crater without saying a word. Shi Yun slowly opened his eyes and looked at the buildings that appeared not far away. The more distinctive industrial-style buildings told Shi Yun that they were going back to the car factory soon. The car drove back to the depot, but he still parked the car back where it was before. After turning off the flame, take off the helmet. Wei Kanjiaying casually straightened her hair messed up by the helmet, and turned to ask her how she felt. Shi Yun didn't answer right away, and raised her hand to open the windshield of the helmet, but it seemed that Hun really didn't come back, and she didn't open it even after pulling twice with her hand. Wei Kanjiaying raised his hand to help her. Shi Yun panted heavily, with some joy in his expression. He helped Wei Kanjiaying's shoulders and got out of the car. His legs were still a little weak. Shi Yun looked down at the ground, looked at his shoes, raised his leg and stomped on the ground. Suddenly, the ground feels so safe. Wei Kong should park the car and take down the car keys. Looking at her with her head down, she raised her hand to support the helmet, and lifted her head up. I didn't give you a sense of security. Shi Yun pretended to think, it must be clothes. As she said that, she raised her hand to take off the helmet. Fortunately, she didn't fake her face, otherwise she would have to change her face every time she took off the helmet. His hair was messed up. Shi Yun stroked his hair, and checked the makeup on his face through the front windshield of his helmet. Fortunately, it was not destroyed. There was no dust on the inside of the helmet either. However, her legs are not as tenacious as her makeup. The tingling feeling hadn't faded from Shi Yun's legs yet. She had just taken a step, and she was so bored that she almost stopped. Wei Zongying saw her legs go limp and almost knelt down, and he waited until Shi Yun almost knelt down before stretching out his hand to pull her. And she reached out and instinctively grabbed the person next to her. Holding Wei Zongying's arm, Shi Yun walked forward slowly. His feet were limp. Wei Kong should let her support him, but he teased her, "Don't I feel a little bit insecure?" Shi Yun hummed, turned to look at him, and acted obediently. This will fill up the safety value. Before leaving, Wei Zongying put the key back in Cheng Ji's place. Shi Yun sat on the sofa in the rest area and waited for him. He and Cheng Ji chatted about the driving experience after the test run just now. Originally thought that they could leave soon, but the two insisted on chatting for more than half an hour. In the end, all the other staff in the depot were off work, and the two were still discussing about the engine and speed. Shi Yun sat on the armrest of the sofa, gradually getting tired. After lowering his head and yawning, Shi Yun suddenly heard a girl's voice, who seemed to be Cheng Ji's girlfriend. She looked a little angry. "It's already off work. Can you stop occupying my boyfriend's time all the time? He is making your money, but you don't need to squeeze him like this. You are always on call, because he will have to work overtime for a few weeks at the slightest request." The drowsiness in Shi Yun's body suddenly disappeared, but when he was curious, he saw that Wei Kanjiaying didn't say anything, and glanced at Cheng Ji lightly. Cheng Ji pulled his girlfriend over, first said sorry to Wei Kanjiaying, and then he walked a few steps away with his girlfriend. The young lovers didn't know what they said. When Cheng Ji turned around and walked back, the girl threw the bag in Cheng Ji's direction, and then ran away covering her face. Cheng Ji wanted to pick up the bag on the ground, but seeing that his hands were full of motor oil, he wiped his coat back and forth several times. When he was about to bend down to pick it up, he saw a pair of canvas shoes. "It's Shi Yun." Shi Yun picked up the bag and gently patted off the dust on it. "Can you put it on the sofa for you?" Cheng Ji didn't speak to her immediately. He glanced past her, first glanced at Wei Kanjiaying, and then thanked Shi Yun. Shi Yun put the bag on the sofa, and Cheng Ji was apologizing to Wei Kanjiang on the other end. I'm really sorry, you continue to talk about what you want to modify. Wei Kanjiang shook his head, forget it. Cheng Ji became nervous. No, don't be angry with Fang Qian, I will apologize to her, No need. Wei Kanjiang patted him on the shoulder, let's go early today. Cheng Ji was nervous, it's okay, I can work overtime. Wei Kanjiang still waved his hand, you can work overtime, we are leaving, and the people I brought are all tired. Come here today, go and coax your girlfriend. The author has something to say, ha 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 ha. No one bet on the question about Mandarin duck socks. Bai Yue Guang is not Cheng Ji either. This guess is too outrageous. But you guys know how to think about it. Thanks to the little angels who voted for me or irrigated nutrient solution during 2022050522:24:53 2022050619:43:45 thanks to the little angel who threw the grenade, Aju 2, Dong Ji 1, thanks to the little angel who threw the landmine, Weian, 5T5's legal wife, Aju, it's you, not you. 1. Thank you to the little angels who irrigate the nutrient solution, 6 bottles of Fatty who doesn't like meat, 5 bottles of Funny Bobo, 4 bottles of Nicole, 2 bottles of My Half Heartbeat. Thank you very much for your support, I will continue to work hard. Shi Yun sat on the armrest of the sofa, turned her head and looked at a display cabinet next to it, on which were various car models that she had never seen before. She didn't know much about cars, but when she looked at the car logos on the car models, she found that they were quite similar. Luxury cars come from the same school. The patriarchs are now lying in the dust-proof glass cover. After Shi Yun yawned a few times at the models, she suddenly found that the voices in her ears were gone. Wei Kanjiang didn't know when he stood behind her, looked sideways at her and yawned several times, sleepy. A little bit. Shi Yun covered his mouth with his hand, probably because the soul out of body in the afternoon was too debilitating. But Wei Kanjiang didn't send her back to school directly, anyway, he still invited someone to dinner. When Shi Yun and Wei Zongying came out of the car factory, they saw Cheng Ji and his girlfriend standing by the side of the road taking a taxi from a distance, and they probably reconciled. Shi Yun looked at the two people standing together in the distance, and suddenly smiled, his girlfriend seems to hate you. Without the prefix, Wei Kanjiang was taken aback, still wondering who his girlfriend was. Following Shi Yun's gaze, he saw Cheng Ji and his girlfriend Fang Qian, and immediately reacted, Cheng Ji is short of money, and wants to earn more money to get married so that his girlfriend won't suffer with him. But his daughter friends are clingy, don't care about the future life, just want to stay with Cheng Ji every day. Do you like your girlfriend to be clingy? Shi Yun asked him. Wei Kanjiang thought for a while, and answered something that was not the answer to the question, but it sounded like an answer, I don't need to earn more money to get married. After speaking, Wei Zongying ignited and started the car. Shi Yun didn't forget to sit in the co-pilot and reminded him to drive slowly. The engine started, the lights came on in front of the car, and all the instruments in the car started to rotate and then quickly reset to 0. The air conditioning comes out of the air vents, but it can't immediately cool down the car that has been in the sun all afternoon. Wei Kong should open the roof of the car, and instead of starting it in a hurry, he turns to look at Shi Yun, did this afternoon scare you? Wei Kong should have asked her in a joking tone, with one hand on the steering wheel, not driving, but looking at her. Shi Yun put on his seat belt with a slightly serious expression in his sight. The expression on her face didn't look like she was angry, she fastened her seat belt, leaned on the back of the seat and turned her head to meet Wei Kanjiang's gaze, my mother died in a car accident. The steel bar was transported on the truck, and the steel bar passed through the front windshield and passed through my mother's body. I was lucky, but suffered some skin trauma. At the last moment, my mother said to the rescuers, save me first. While talking, Shi Yun watched as the smile on Wei Kanjieng's face disappeared, and then he heard him say sorry. Shi Yun took back all the sadness in an instant, without blaming him, like a warning, a car accident is a terrible thing, so drive safely. Similar to Lin Fang's elders, Wei Kong should step on the clutch and drive the car out of the parking space. Wei Kanjieng looked at the front of the car and didn't accelerate. Okay, drive slowly and drive safely. He did drive very slowly all the way, but it happened to catch up with the peak traffic at night. So Shi Yun didn't know that he really listened to what he said, but he had to drive slowly. Dinner is local dishes. The guest was Shi Yun. Shi Yun, I have to treat you once too, thank you for sending me to the police duty room last time. Speaking of that time, Wei Kanjieng was curious, that time you said you waited for me for a long time, did you know me before? After finishing speaking, Shi Yun was taken aback. That stunned look seemed a little guilty. Wei Kanjieng looked at her, waiting for her answer. Under his gaze, Shi Yun was silent for a while. The restaurant was very bright, and none of her small expressions could escape Wei Zongying's eyes. Looking at Wei Kanjieng's face, Shi Yun felt the despicable selfishness in her body began to haunt her, and the truth was on her lips, but the words she said were still contrary to the truth. She hid her guilty conscience, met Wei Kanjieng's gaze generously, and looked seeing his burning eyes. Shi Yun nodded, I've seen you a few times from far away, and I didn't have time to go up and say hello to you. This answer did not arouse Wei Zongying's suspicion. This overconfidence ended up hurting him a bit, but now he only thinks that Shi Yun's feelings for him are normal. She is just like her previous girlfriends, she likes herself. For Shi Yun's liking, Wei Kong should be happy, which means that he can save a lot of effort in chasing her. The taste of the local dishes in the south is unexpectedly in line with the tastes of the people in the two capitals. It may be that the taste is not authentic. Shi Yun raised his hand to let the waiter come to check out. Although the local dishes are not expensive, the price is not very cheap because of the location of the shop. After Shi Yun finished paying the bill, he didn't ask for it. With the sweet taste of the last plate of sweet and sour meat in his mouth, Shi Yun took a sip of lemonade before leaving. The person on the opposite side had already got up, with a mobile phone in his hand. He didn't know who he was sending a message to, so he left seriously, and didn't notice that Shi Yun was drinking water and didn't keep up. After walking a few steps, he finished sending the message. When he turned his head and saw Shi Yun, who had just got up from the dining table, he put his phone back in his pants pocket and stood sideways in the aisle to wait for her, so as not to cause trouble for other people to pass by. Wei Kanjieng waited for her to come over, then leaned slightly and asked her, "Do you want to buy something else?" When I asked, a waiter happened to be holding a plate and shouting something like "Welcome, walk slowly." The formatted and emotionless shouts were passed on one after another, and all the waiters in the restaurant shouted. Shi Yun didn't hear what he said, and first asked the waiter who met her face to stand side by side with Wei Kanjieng. When the waiter's voice died down, she asked, "What?" Wei Kanjieng moved closer, "Do you want to buy something else?" Getting too close, Shi Yun smelled the woody perfume on his body. It was the same smoked pine perfume from last time. Shi Yun shook his head and gave him a slight push, "Let's go out first." He seemed to be really busy today, and the vibrating cell phone in his pocket rang again. After Wei Kanjieng said "Excuse me," he took out his mobile phone from his pocket. Shi Yun didn't care and let him do the work first. The two of them didn't seem to have a date after dinner, and he sent Shi Yun back to school every time after dinner. Recently, there seems to be a movie with a big investment, and the poster is hung on the eye-catching advertising space of the mall, and a lot of money has been spent. Wei Kong should have put his phone back in his pocket, and the question remains, do you want to go shopping again? Seeing that he has been sending messages today, Shi Yun took a step back, "Forget it, let's do it next time." He looked quite busy with a lot of things to do. The car was parked on the second floor, and they went to the side to take the elevator. There are quite a few people going up and down at this time, and the narrow elevator space is crowded with people, and the fragrance is mixed with fragrance. A group of people got out of the elevator, and another group of people entered the elevator. Shi Yun has no sense of direction. Once the way of coming and going is different, she will not know the way. Wei Kong should walk in front and lead the way. The parking lot smelled bad and was stuffy. After walking a few steps, sweat came out. The person leading the way also stopped, raised his chin, and motioned her to look at the glass door behind him, which was the elevator entrance. Wait for me over there, I'll drive the car over. Shi Yun walked back, stood behind the glass door and used the air conditioning to heal the discomfort he felt from being heated up in just half a minute. Looking forward through the glass door, Wei Zongying was no longer there. He didn't keep Shi Yun waiting for long, and after a while, he came by car. When Shi Yun got into the car, the cooling in the car was turned on to the maximum. She had just put on her seat belt when a call came in from her cell phone in the cup holder. The note is Lin Feng. Wei Kanjiaying steered the steering wheel with one hand and answered the phone with the other. Shi Yun felt nervous watching, and reminded the driver in a low voice, "Pull over for a while, and leave after you finish your phone call." Wei Kong should do so. But his voice was heard by the person on the other end of the phone, and Shi Yun could faintly hear something on the other end of the phone saying that we are coming together in the quiet car. Wei Kong should know that Lin Feng would not give up, so he looked at Shi Yun with some embarrassment. "They want you to go with them, do you want to go?" Shi Yun didn't speak. He took the phone a little farther away, and whispered to Shi Yun, "Tell me to play cards, it's actually pretty good, let's go and make some money." Shi Yun looked at him suspiciously. A car drove towards them. It seemed to be an Audi. The headlights were very bright, and the light shone into the front windshield, making everything dark in their car and the expressions of the two of them invisible. Wei Kanjiaying continued to whisper, with some smiles, "I'll earn you some money to buy socks." It was yesterday that she casually said an excuse that she didn't want to eat Japanese food because of the Mandarin duck socks. Shi Yun was slightly taken aback. Wei Kanjiaying was still waiting for her to answer, probably because he didn't want the person on the other end of the phone to hear. He asked in a low voice, moved closer, and asked her in a voice that only he and Shi Yun could hear, "Are you going?" "I'm going to show off. The location is Hai Clubhouse." He parked the car directly at the gate and got out of the car. A staff member was already waiting at the door. Wei Kong should throw the car keys to him, and while waiting for Shi Yun to walk beside him, he asked him, "Where is Lin Feng?" The staff took the key and pointed to it, the 8th floor. The decoration style of Haiyu incorporates some Sunchuan garden styles. What is placed in the hall is not a work of art, but a Tumaturai statue of Guangong. When Shi Yun looked around, he was taken aback by the statue of Guangong, and leaned in the direction of Wei Zongying next to him. His arm was touched by someone. Wei Kanjiaying glanced to the side, and understood that it was the statue of Guangong, and pointed to his other side, "Go to my place." It wasn't any other scary sculptures. Shi Yun just wasn't mentally prepared, so he wouldn't want to switch sides. The elevator came down from upstairs, just the two of them. Shi Yun habitually leans against the far side and the corner of the elevator as soon as he enters. Wei Zongying presses the floor number, turns around and sees her standing far away, thinking that she is going to meet someone later, so she is a little nervous and restrained. He waved at her, and Shi Yun looked at him with some puzzlement at the gesture of waving. Wei Kanjiaying leaned over, and the sudden approach made Shi Yun instinctively lean back, but she was already leaning against the wall. This action made the back of her head hit the elevator car wall, and the shark hairpin hurt a little. Wei Kanjiaying stretched out his hand behind her head. His arm brushed against the tip of Shi Yun's ear. He was much taller than Shi Yun, blocking the light above the elevator, and his shadow fell on Shi Yun. "Just like when you helped her put on the helmet before, pinch the shark." Shi Yun felt her scalp loosen, and her hair fell loose. He raised his hand and fiddled with her lightly, looking into her eyes. Very beautiful, don't be nervous. The tone is sincere and flirtatious. The author has something to say. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but I don't like birthdays anymore. In the last chapter, I changed what Hisui said. I wish the mothers of the little fairies who saw this line a happy holiday. Thanks to the little angels who voted for me or irrigated nutrient solution during 2022050619:43:45 2022050718:49:18 Thanks to the little angel who threw the grenade, Aju 1, thanks to the little angel who threw the mine, 5T5 legal wife 1, thanks to the little angels of the irrigation nutrient solution, 20 bottles of elegant life, 10 bottles of pearl milk tea not chasing cereals, 5 bottles of joyful, 544 bottles of KKKKK, 2 bottles of my half heartbeat and Q. Thank you very much for your support. I will continue to work hard. When Lin Fang opened the door and came out of the box to answer the phone, he happened to see Wei Kanjiaying and Shi Yun coming out of the elevator. Looking at the person next to Wei Kanjiaying, Lin Fang felt that Shi Yun was not the granddaughter of the grandmother's neighbor whom Wei Kanjiaying mentioned last time. But he didn't say much, but raised his hand to greet Wei Kanjiaying first, and then smiled politely at Shi Yun. Wei Kanjiaying walked over and looked at Lin Fang who came out. Are you going to run? Lin Fang shook his phone, with a bad expression on his face. No, come out and call my dad back. It's not like you don't know that they are a bunch of hurtful people. Damn, whenever I talk to my dad on the phone, I call like a woman next to me. Really? This group of them played together since they were young. When there is danger or trouble, one is more reliable than the other, and when there is no danger or nothing, one can compete with the other to deceive people. Wei Kanjiaying just wanted to ask Lin Fang if everyone had arrived, but he tilted his head first when he spoke, and introduced to Shi Yun who was walking behind him. Lin Fang, the one who broke up to send Fendi, I just helped him go that time separate. Lin Fang frowned, how could there be such an introduction? But he said hello to Shi Yun cooperatively. Shi Yun replied hello and gave his name. Wei Kong should ask, is it all here? Lin Fang was about to make a call, and looked down at his father's phone. No, Zhang Suyang said there will be a traffic jam later. Traffic jam? Wei Kong responded with a smile, the house he just bought is almost out of the capital, and there are not even ghosts on the road, and there is still traffic jam. Wei Kong shouldn't believe it, but he didn't bother to call to see if he was in a real traffic jam or a fake traffic jam. Lin Fang, who was on the phone, walked to the box, and the waiter at the door opened the door cooperatively. However, there were only 2 people in the box. The awkwardness of meeting strangers immediately diminished a lot at that moment. One of the 2 was sitting at the table, and the other was making tea facing the wall cabinet. The tea maker is wearing Hai's work uniform. The one who was sitting looked about the same age as Wei Zongying, and his appearance was not too outstanding. He was covered with big famous brand logos, and was sitting at the card table with a mobile phone, a glass of Jinjunmiai and an ashtray in hand. The person sitting inside had just lit a cigarette when he heard the sound of the door opening, looked up and saw that it was Wei Kong who responded, "You're here." Wei Zongying hummed, looked at the 4 chairs by the table, dragged one from the wall as he walked over, and the staff went to help immediately. Putting the chair next to Wei Zongying's position, he asked the next 2 people what they wanted to drink. There was a drink list on the tablet handed over, and Shi Yun picked a drink with a poetic name Stone Top Rain. Wei Zong asked for a cup of Jinjunmiai. Wei Kanjiaying sat face to face with the person who was in the box before. Shi Yun sat next to Wei Kanjiaying and looked towards the opposite side, and met the eyes of the person opposite. That person took down the cigarette, flicked the ash into the ashtray, and put the cigarette again, handing it to his mouth. He sat up straight, leaned forward slightly, and stretched out his hand towards Shi Yun from the other side of the table. My name is Yang Xiao Yuan. Shi Yun shook hands back. Shi Yun. Lin Fang came back after making the phone call, walked in and looked at the phone. Zhang Suyang is driving his grandma's electric wheelchair, right? I just called him too, and it was said 20 minutes ago that he was on the East Ring Elevated Road. It's still on the East Ring Elevated Road. Wei Kong responded with a smile, even if you drive an electric wheelchair, you should be there, and the green passage for the disabled will not be blocked by traffic. Xiang Xiaoyuan saw Lin Fang walking in, and smiled. Did you finish calling your dad, good boy? The word good baby is disgusting enough. Lin Fang pulled away the chair and sat down at the poker table. Damn it, it's because Fu Wang went in again. My dad reminded me to be a man with my tail between my legs. I don't even need to sit like this. I don't want to play with Fu Wang. Last time he went in, I deleted his WeChat account, and my ex-girlfriend didn't even get this treatment. The waiter came in with 2 cups of tea. Shi Yun was confused by what they said. He didn't know who the names of those people were in their words, and he didn't know what happened to those people. Looking at the deaf waiter in the box, his professionalism was quite high. Wei Conjaying took the 2 cups, put them together on the small table beside the table, and asked casually, why did Fu Wang go in this time? Lin Fang chatted about gossip, and finally came to the spirit. Isn't that old man in their family dying soon? It is estimated that the shareholders' meeting is about to start, and all kinds of intrigues are going to be tricked. If you tell me black material, I will take off your pants. Fu Wang dad's biggest scandal is this son. And I heard that it was the illegitimate son of his boss who was outside who sent Fu Wang in. Chatting gossip, but waiting is not enough. After Lin Fang finished speaking, he turned to look at Shi Yun. Can you play cards? After he finished speaking, the other 2 people at the table looked at Shi Yun. Shi Yun nodded as she expected amidst several expectant eyes. She got up from the seat next to Wei Conjaying, and moved to another empty seat. The staff who dealt the cards wore white gloves, but the action of shuffling and dealing the cards was not sloppy at all. Lin Fang told Shi Yun not to be nervous. If you win, it's yours. If you lose, it's Wei Zongying. What they play is to escape quickly. Whoever finishes first wins. There is no last place. The winner takes 3. After Wei Conjaying finished sorting the cards, he glanced at Shi Yun next to him, seeing that she probably sorted out the cards like Shun Ziai and kept them in his hand, and smiled. What about setting up a stall? Shi Yun closed the cards in his hand, and then crushed them again. There are too many cards. There is still some element of luck in this poker style of play, and Shi Yun's first hand was not bad. As soon as she played, the cards in her hand were gone. Wei Conjaying saw that she really had won, and threw all the cards in his hand in the center of the table, waiting for the staff who shuffled and dealt the cards to take them away, boasting, excellent. The second hand was also originally won by Shi Yun, but when she played it, she found that the cards in her hand were gone, and when she thought she had won again, she realized that she still had a stack of straights on the table that hadn't been drawn yet. Afterwards, they made a pair and a single. Shi Yun was reluctant to break it with a straight hand, and finally lost. Next, Wei Conjaying started to catch 3, Shi Yun won or lost, but it was better than Lin Fang and Xiang Xiaoyuan who had never opened the door. Shi Yun was still the last one to finish sorting the cards, probably because he hadn't won all the time. Xiang Xiaoyuan looked at Shi Yun who was moving a bit slowly, and his attitude was a little bad. Hurry up, grind and chirp. Shi Yun put the Shun Ziai on the table as before, and was a little embarrassed when he heard Xiang Xiaoyuan's words. He said sorry, looked at the card that Wei Zong should play, and followed a pair. I'm sorry. After playing the cards, she saw Xiang Xiaoyuan bow his head and say something barely apologetic. It's okay, just play slowly. When she was suspicious, she caught the ruthless tail in Wei Zongying's eyes. Wei Conjaying lowered his eyes, changed his expression, looked at Shi Yun who was looking at him, raised his hand and tapped the face of the small stack of cards she was holding. Don't forget to play this small stack again. However, this deck of cards was too stinky, and Shi Yun's cards were scattered. Halfway there, the door of the box opened, and the four of them looked towards the door at the same time. Lin Fang uttered swear words, "Zhang Suyang, you came to pay the bill, didn't you?" After hearing this, the person at the door stood still and turned around to leave. "Then I'm leaving." He said that only for a show. As Zhang Suyang said, he walked in, saw Shi Yun who was going home with Wei Zong, and stared at him blatantly, "Who can introduce to me? This means who brought it?" Wei Kong responded, "Shi Yun." "Zhang Suyang, Zhang Suyang." After finishing speaking, he walked behind Shi Yun, put his hands on the back of Shi Yun's chair, looked at Shi Yun's cards for a while, and Wei Zong's response cards for a while. He probably hadn't heard the phrase watching chess without talking, a real gentleman, or maybe he wanted to end the game quickly. "Oh, my sister, your cards are really stinky. Tiske Kong, you play some cards for her, what does it matter if you win? I haven't won a hand so far, why don't you come and sympathize with me?" Lin Fang was not convinced, although everyone at the poker table could see that some of Wei Zongying really gave Shi Yun water. "Zhang Suyang, you deserve it, you were so scared to death, and you called me 5 times along the way. Who do you not lose?" In the end, Wei Zongying still won the hand. Shi Yun gave up the seat to Zhang Suyang, and when he got up, he saw the 2 glasses of their drinks that Wei Kanjiaying had placed on the small table next to him. Probably because of the intermission, Wei Kanjiaying didn't look at it, and just took a glass. What Shi Yun took was the stone-top rain dew that Shi Yun hadn't had time to take a sip of. The second after the entrance, he frowned, looked at the glass and the liquid in the glass, it's wine. In the end, Wei Zongying's Jin Junmei was drunk by Shi Yun. He originally wanted to drink more, but Xiang Xiaoyuan probably said not to waste it, thinking that if Wei Zongying drank too much, they would win him. Shi Yun didn't taste the rain and dew on the top of the stone in one sip, and he didn't know whether the alcohol was high or not, but after he drank it, his skin began to turn red. Xiang Xiaoyuan also asked the waiter to refill Wei Kong's Shiding Yulu, which had bottomed out. The more he drank, the more thirsty his mouth would become. Shi Yun saw the waiter who came to refill them with tea and left the hot water bottle in the box. Shi Yun sat next to him and watched him arrange the cards, and asked him in a low voice, "Do you want a drink of water? I'll pour you a glass." Wei Kanjiaying shook his head and said it was all right. Shi Yun sat next to him and watched him play cards. He was a person who was willing to break the cards, which was different from Shi Yun who was holding a hand of straights and was reluctant to break them and ended up rotten in his hands. Sometimes he can win a bad hand with tricks. Looking at him from the side, Pai Xiang picked up the beauty of his profile. Shi Yun sat beside him and looked at him, his eyes and attention slowly shifted from the game to his face. Shi Yun looked at his side face for a long time, his thoughts drifted away. Suddenly, the person inside turned his face slightly, he met Shi Yun's focused gaze, he didn't say anything, just raised the corner of his mouth. Alcohol cast a layer of veil on his eyes, and when he looked at people, he always felt that his eyes were blunt. I don't know if it was because of drinking, he didn't win much later. During the intermission, some of them who want to smoke, and those who go to the toilet go to the toilet. Lin Fang first went to the door of the toilet in the box, pressed the switch twice, but found that the light was not on, and finally went to the toilet at the end of the corridor helplessly. Shi Yun drank 2 glasses of water, and when she was about to open the door and go out, Wei Kong should have stood behind her at some point. Shi Yun's eyes and responsiveness gave Shi Yun a feeling of network delay. When asked where she was going, she said to go to the bathroom. The toilets in the clubhouse are clean, probably because not many people come to use the toilets. The fragrance is a common jasmine fragrance, but not inferior. The hand-washing area of the toilet is located inside the men's and women's toilets, not the public area outside. Shi Yun squeezed on the hand sanitizer, and could faintly smell the cigarettes on her body. It is a professional habit for her to wash her forearm when washing her hands, and she took several paper towels to wipe off the water droplets on her forearm and hands. She heard voices outside, and the closed toilet door was not as soundproof as she had imagined. It was Jiang Suyang and Wei Zongying who heard the voices. It was Jiang Suyang who spoke first. "Girlfriend?" He replied, "Not yet." "Jiang Suyang, then you and that one who is over 1.6 meters tall and always steps on the sky, what's that called?" "Huang." "Huang what?" Wei Zong reported his name, but Shi Yun didn't catch it clearly. Jiang Suyang asked, "I saw her when I first came, she was on the first floor. Did you break up with her?" Speaking of this, Lin Fang's voice appeared, "I can hear your voice even if you pee inside." Jiang Suyang joked, "Paid program." Lin Fang choked back, "I don't even want to read the post for 300. Jiang Suyang probably went to the toilet, and his voice became a little soft, "I want 50, and I leave the rest to you." There were two people standing outside chatting, but Lin Fang didn't understand the meaning of Jiang Suyang's words, and asked Wei Zongying standing at the door whether he won or lost today. Wei Kanjiaying had won a lot before, and he didn't lose money even if he lost later. After the calculation, there was an extra 200 yuan in the end. "Lin Fang, it will be charged to your account at night." Wei Kong should refuse, "No." He said he wanted to save money, which confused Lin Fang. There was a smile in Wei Kanjiaying's voice, "I keep the money to buy socks." The author has something to say. Thanks to the little angels who voted for me or irrigated nutrient solution during 2022-05078-2022-050812:42:24. Thanks to the little angel who cast the rocket launcher, Aju 1, thanks to the little angel who threw the grenade, Aju 2, thanks to the little angel who threw the landmine, gnawing carrots, 5T5 legal wife, half of my heartbeat. Is it jade or not jade? 1. Thanks to the little angels who irrigate the nutrient solution, 10 bottles for the rest of your life, 6 bottles for fat people who don't like meat, 5 bottles for Zhang Yuji, 3 bottles for Gaogu Bus, 2 bottles for my half heartbeat, 1 bottle for Yvonne. Thank you very much for your support, I will continue to work hard. Sock. Lin Fang felt that he himself had been drinking. Why suddenly he couldn't understand what Wei Kanjiaying was talking about. "Why did you suddenly buy socks?" Wei Zongying didn't explain, ignored Lin Fang's doubts, and reminded him kindly, "Jiang Suyang said to find you 50, think about it." Lin Fang was a little confused, looking for 50? After realizing it, Lin Fang rushed into the men's room again, "Jiang Suyang, you're only 205. Immediately afterwards, the person inside was furious, "Don't tease me, you're going to the toilet." "That's fine, if you shake me again, I'll lick you." There was noise in the men's room, but it was quiet in the corridor outside. Shi Yun handed the paper to wipe his arm into the trash can, and the ball of paper was caught precisely. When she heard Wei Kanjiaying's words, "I keep the money to buy socks," a little different emotion appeared in her heart, but Shi Yun just put those emotions to the end. Lin Fang also said that he heard them chatting outside when he was going to the bathroom, so he knew she could actually hear them too. Whether those words were provocative on purpose or without thinking, only he knew the correct answer in his heart. But Shi Yun was more inclined to the former. Shi Yun looked in the mirror and adjusted his hair for the last time. When he went out, he was alone. His cheeks and neck were flushed from the alcohol. He stood leaning against the wall and waited for Shi Yun to come over. The canvas shoes stopped 30 or 40 centimeters away from his sneakers. Shi Yun looked up at him, "You can't drive back at night after drinking." "It doesn't matter, in this era, you don't have to worry about not being able to find a substitute driver. But Wei Kong should change his mind, give you a chance to exercise." There was no more noise in the men's room. Shi Yun followed Wei Zongying and walked back slowly towards the box. With the solace of his shoes on the soft carpet, Wei Kanjiaying asked her if she was having fun. Shi Yun turned to look at him, seeing his drunken appearance, raised his hand to support him, talking and laughing. I think they are quite interesting. Wei Conjaying listened, and played the role of the villain who stabbed the knife in the back, but he is not a good person. Shi Yun turned back to the army. People are divided into groups. Because of the supporting action, the two of them got close, and the warm palms pressed against his arms. Every now and then the shoulders bump into each other. Wei Kong should be self-deprecating, I am not. Wei Kong should not put a high hat on herself, but she is like a good teacher who encourages students. When I saw me for the first time, I didn't leave me alone at the barbecue stand, but sent me to the police station. She is a good person. The box was close at hand, and the waiter at the door saw them approaching and opened the door. Wei Zongying paused for a while, tilted his head and whispered to Shi Yun who was supporting him beside him, "How about repaying your kindness?" What he said about knowing kindness and repaying his kindness was not to promise such a drama with his body, but to give up the position to Shi Yun by playing cards, saying that his eyes were blurred from drinking too much. He sat in Shi Yun's position, put one hand on the back of Shi Yun's chair, and asked her to come wherever she wanted, and the loss was his. The game didn't end too late. Xiang Shaoyuan didn't win all the time, and in the end he refused to let him go, so Zhang Suyang persuaded him to go back. When Lin Fang was going downstairs in the elevator, he was still calculating his win or loss for the day, when he suddenly thought of something. He turned his head and looked at Shi Yun who was standing in the corner of the elevator. "Don't let him drive." It was Wei Zongying who paid the bill. He walked forward, and the waiter handed him today's bill, and he took the pen and signed his name on the bill at the front desk. Everyone seems to like to put a dot next to their autographs, and he was no different. They separated at the door, and they drove away in their own cars. Wei Conjaying threw the car keys to Shi Yun, and Shi Yun looked at the car keys in his hand, feeling a little apprehensive. "I can't. It's not your fault if you rub against it." Wei Zongying said that he had already opened the passenger's door, not feeling distressed at all. He sat on the co-pilot and adjusted the seat slightly to stretch his legs more comfortably. Looking at Shi Yun in the driver's seat, he suddenly looked like a driving school instructor. His car is a manual transmission, and a manual transmission car can preserve the driving experience very well. They call this a man's feelings. The only manual transmission car that Shi Yun has come into contact with so far in her life is the coach car of the driving school. She almost forgot how to start. He reached under the steering wheel, looked at Shi Yun who was sitting awkwardly, and told her that the buttons to adjust the steering wheel were under this. Press the clutch and brake. Shi Yun adjusted the height and angle of the steering wheel, looked at the car logo on the steering wheel, and knew that this car was not cheap. As if the car didn't belong to him, Wei Conjaying was very calm. "Don't worry, it's okay to start in second gear. Few people can still turn off the engine when driving this car." Shi Yun slowly drove the car according to his instructions. She had learned her driver's license for a while, but she didn't drive often, especially after she was in a car accident with her mother. She had a little psychological shadow on driving. His car has a sensor radar for the distance between cars, and when an object approaches the car, it will make a beeping sound. The direction of the object is reflected in real time on the central control display. The road out was not wide, and there was a row of cars parked by the side of the road. She didn't have a sense of the distance of the width of the car, and the whole car drove very close to her. Even so, the vehicle distance radar still indicates that there is an object in the direction of the co-pilot. Shi Yun drove the car out at a snail's pace. Wei Kong should remind her to drive towards him, but she didn't dare. Wei Conjaying listened to the did-I notification tone of the radar in the car, and teased her, "Where are you sending a telegram?" Wei Conjaying sat calmly in the co-pilot and joked with her. The driver ignored his words to make her relax, and reminded him to help him watch the road conditions. "Afraid of what?" Wei Conjaying raised his hands, folded the palms of his hands together, and rested them between the back of the chair and his head. "I was afraid after the car accident." Shi Yun's nerves were highly tense. These words did not make Wei Kanjiang give up the idea of letting her drive. He had more car accidents while driving. In his opinion, once fear arises, running away cannot solve the problem. But he still sat up a little bit to make himself look a little more secure. Don't be nervous, let go of the accelerator, and take the straight road in the middle. Wei Kanjiang put one hand on the gear, watched the speed of the car, and asked her to step on the clutch to help her change gears. The car stopped at the traffic light, and Shi Yun let out a sigh of relief when the car stopped. She sighed quite loudly, and just as she relaxed, she heard laughter from the side. Slightly angry, "What are you laughing at?" He put away that smile, changed his face, and became a little serious. "How long has it been since Auntie passed away?" After hearing this, Shi Yun lowered his eyes. 3 years. The red light lasted for a long time. Wei Kanjiang observed her expression. "Is it because of this reason that you don't go home during the summer vacation?" It was hit by Wei Zongying. Shi Yun looked at the green light and lifted the clutch. "I was going out to play at night. My mother was worried about me and drove me home. There was a car accident on the way." She thought about the day when her mother asked others to save her first, but she sat helplessly on the side of the road and watched the car burn down in the fire. "If it wasn't because she was coming to pick her up at that time, my mother would not have driven out. Subsequent tragedies will not happen." The dark cloud that lingered in Shi Yun's heart after her mother's death rained glass on her heart. Pieces of glass cut her painfully. Guilt and remorse. This growing emotion was suddenly interrupted by the arm that had been hanging on her arm, and Wei Kanjiang looked ahead, concentrate on driving. However, Shi Yun still missed the turning intersection. Wei Kanjiang told her that it's okay, and it's okay to turn right at the next intersection. There are no noisy nightlife bars on this road. There are not many cars coming and going. Occasionally, a few taxis pass by. However, there are many residential buildings along the street with lights on. Distance. There were no stars in the dark sky. Half of the moon was blocked by tall buildings not far away. The street lamp was about the same height as a camphor tree, and the faint light of the street lamp leaked a little light from the gaps in the leaves. Wei Kong should remind her to turn on the turn signal. Shi Yun stepped aside, and there was no car in the rear-view mirror. She wasn't driving fast, but she had her hands behind the steering wheel, which had only wipers and no turn signals. After a while of fussing around, Wei Kanjiang stretched out his hand and helped her press the turn signal that looked like a gear paddle. "This is how it is pressed." Shi Yun turned the corner, but in the next second she saw a battery car coming out from the side. Boom! Shi Yun's heart skipped a beat. The sound of the impact and the shaking of the vehicle made the scene of the car accident flash before Shi Yun's eyes. Hidden in the folds of memory, the forgotten scene came to mind again. Wei Zong seemed to lose his strength in response to alcohol in an instant. He was the first to react, and got out of the car to check the battery car. "It's a guy who delivers food." People fell to the ground, and the takeaway was spilled all over the floor. The elbows and cheeks were torn, and the pants were also worn out. When he got up, he grinned in pain. When he saw Wei Kanjiang who got out of the car, he said in a slightly aggressive tone, "What's the matter with you? If you want to turn around or not, if you turn around, you won't look at it." Glass. Wei Kanjiang took out his mobile phone from his pocket and called the police, and also contacted his insurance company. "I have already called the police, and I am fully responsible for it, so I will take my insurance. Do you have any discomfort? I will also call an ambulance." After finishing speaking, he heard the sound of the car door opening and closing, and turned around to find Shi Yun walking over. She looked at the delivery boy with a pale face. As a medical student, she instinctively wanted to step forward to help him check the wound. In the trunk of Wei Zongying's car, there is a reflective warning vest given when he bought the car and a first aid kit that can be used in an emergency. The first aid kit contained gauze and cotton swabs, but no iodine. Shi Yun brought over the mineral water from the takeaway, and made a gesture to unscrew the bottle cap, but the delivery boy stopped her. This is from the customer. You don't care about your wound. Shi Yun still unscrewed the cap of the bottle, and poured mineral water on his wound. The movements of her hands looked numb, but her hands were shaking all the time. The takeaway boy was so hurt that his 5 sense organs flew wildly, but he still thought of calling the customer first and explaining the situation of his car accident. The customer was also reasonable. Shi Yun saw that his hands on the phone were torn, and also saw a small card stuck in his phone case, which looked like it was drawn by a child. Shi Yun treated the wound and said, "I'm sorry." The takeaway boy looked at the broken skin in his hand. "You are really driving? If you want to turn, just turn directly. I see you are hesitant, so I think I will pass by. If you turn right, you have to see if there is any car coming later. The road is not driven by your house." Shi Yun listened, raised his hand slightly, and wrapped it in gauze. "I'm sorry." None of the limbs seemed to be broken, and she couldn't detect the remaining possible internal injuries. After insulting her for a few words, the delivery boy stopped talking, and sat quietly on the side of the road waiting for the police and ambulance. During the period, he also received a call, which sounded like his wife. Before answering the call, he coughed twice and cleared his throat. "Hey! I will go back after a few more orders. You and Meng Meng go to bed first. I know, I've been driving very slowly. Well, I won't tell you any more. I'm going to call the customer and tell him to open the door." The fear gradually faded away, and what came to my mind was guilt and shame. Shi Yun thought about walking back to the car, and took out his bag from the car. The action was seen by Wei Kanjiaying, and he didn't let it go. "It's mine." Shi Yun didn't speak, but he kept pulling out his phone. Wei Kanjiaying pressed her hand down, put the phone back into the bag, threw the bag back into the car, and raised his hand to close the car door. Wei Kanjiaying saw that her eyes were watery. "Are you scared?" Shi Yun stood beside him, and the night wind blew away the smell of smoke from the two of them. She stood a little closer to Wei Kanjiaying, and after he nodded, he gently raised his hand and hugged her in his arms. Kong Wu's strong arm rested on her shoulder, and Shi Yun staggered a step, leaning against his chest. The cotton cloth was still a bit smelly, but when he got closer, he could still smell the smell of smoked pine wood. Thick palms touched her shoulders, and the warmth of the palms was transmitted to her skin through the fabric of the jacket. His voice came from above his head. He was a little hoarse after drinking, but his tone was gentle and not loud. "It's all my fault. It's because I'm not good enough to force you to drive. Blame me, okay, don't cry." The author has something to say. The daughter really has a psychological shadow, so she looks a little crying. I have a personal matter tomorrow, so I won't update it. Thanks to the little angels who voted for me or irrigated nutrient solution during 2022-0500812-42-2022-0500922:17:05. Thanks to the little angel who cast the rocket launcher, Dongji 1. Thanks to the little angel who threw the landmine, Jing Jing Ye, it's you, not you. 1. Thanks to the little angels who irrigate the nutrient solution, 20 bottles of Elegant Life, 12 bottles of Wearing the Wind and Listening to the Rain, 10 bottles of A Fish, 4 bottles of The Old Time, 3 bottles in the Spring Tree. Thank you very much for your support. I will continue to work hard. Gently patting Shi Yun's back with his palm, Wei Kong should feel a little guilty. He insisted on asking her to challenge her psychological shadow, and the shadow might be even heavier now. He didn't care about the maintenance of the car, and patiently coaxed Shi Yun, who was crying without tears. He was obviously crying, but his silent appearance hit a soft corner of Wei Zongying's heart for some reason. He didn't say a word of blame from the beginning to the end, and he took all the faults on himself, and everything was his fault. After a while, he heard Shi Yun say, "I'm sorry." Wei Kanjiaying looked down at her, raised his hand and gently wiped her sweaty forehead with the palm of his hand. "I'll call someone to pick you up and take you back to school, okay?" I'll follow him to the hospital later. He asked Shi-yun in a discussing tone, and when he was giving directions, he didn't get angry because she missed an intersection and bumped into someone, so he blamed himself. At that time, Shi-yun thought, the prodigal son is the prodigal son, but she interpreted the last two words of the prodigal son's love so deeply, from the beginning to the end, she did everything vividly and vividly. At that time she probably understood why Scheherazade there will be so many, why would one after another want to bring such a man out of the sea? Wei Conjaying thought about where those people lived, called Xiang Shaoyuan and asked him where he was. Xiang Shaoyuan was just halfway there when he called him back. Wei Conjaying called himself a substitute driver to drive, and gave Shi-yun Xiang Shaoyuan's phone number along the way. The police arrived soon, and two doctors got in and out of the ambulance and pushed a car to let the delivery guy lie down. The police checked Shi-yun who was driving, took a drunk driving test, took photos of the scene, and typed out the punishment list. After finishing all these, they called Wei Zongying to go to the hospital together. The surrogate driver he called also came, and before leaving, he called Xiang Shaoyuan again, and Xiang Shaoyuan said on the other end of the phone that there was still one traffic light and he would arrive. Wei Conjaying took out Shi-yun's bag from the car and gave her the last word to comfort her before leaving, "It's nothing, blame me. There is a traffic light to Shaoyuan for 10 minutes. He drove the car to the side of the road, lowered the window, and let Shi-yun on the side of the road get into the car. When Shi-yun sat in the co-pilot, he stepped on the accelerator before Shi-yun put on his seat belt. He must have asked what happened first. After figuring out what happened, Xiang Shaoyuan smiled, "It's pretty good." After hearing this, Shi-yun turned to look at him, and he added, "I don't mean it's a good collision, I mean it's good for you." The two of them didn't talk much along the way. Xiang Shaoyuan didn't make a turn to enter the school, and sent Shi-yun off by the side of the road. After Shi-yun thanked him, Xiang Shaoyuan just replied yes coldly, then kicked the accelerator and left. The dormitory where Shi-yun lives doesn't lock the door, and the auntie in the dormitory went to bed early, and she can push the door in by herself after swiping the downstairs access control with her campus card. Originally, there were not many people in the dormitory building during the holidays, and every step she took to go up the stairs echoed in the stairwell. The dormitory was still the same as when she left during the day. Shi-yun sent a text message to Wei Conjaying, asking him how it was going. There was no reply to the message, and Shi-yun finally failed to hold on and fell asleep. When she woke up in the morning, Shi-yun picked up her phone and found that there was no new news. She threw the phone on the bed and put the back of her hand on her eyes. Her brain was still turned on. The drowsiness and worry pulled each other, and when he finally wandered, the phone suddenly started to vibrate. The default phone ringtone rang. Shi-yun sat up, picked up the phone and saw the note. She frowned. "It's Hisui." After Shi-yun washed up, he changed out of his pajamas and went downstairs. There was no makeup on his face, and his hair was clipped casually. It was too late when she came back yesterday. She didn't wash her hair. There is still a bit of smoke in the hair. When she went downstairs wearing slippers and short sleeves, Hisui was holding a bag and standing under the shade of a tree waving to her. Unlike Wei Congying who always likes to wear black, Hisui likes to wear white and grey. He should have had a haircut recently, and the sides have been trimmed a little shorter. Shi-yun raised his hand and used his mobile phone as a parasol to cover his eyes. Although it was only morning in July, the sun was already dazzling. The dew on the leaves has long since evaporated, and the chirping sparrows on the branches of the camphor tree are jumping around. Under the tree, an orange cat is sleeping on the ground protruding from the roots of the tree. Its sleep seems not to be disturbed by sparrows. The two of them have known each other since they were young. Boys and girls were more or less at odds with each other when they were young, and it was the same with Shi-yun and Hisui. When Shi-yun took advantage of the girl's development first, he grew up with Hisui. Later, Hisui overtook him in size during his growth period, but his brother broke the banner of down with oppression. But fortunately, because he was getting older at that time, he and Shi Yun didn't quarrel anymore. Shi Yun was smart, and after skipping 2 grades, he successfully became his senior sister. The person standing under the shade looked up at her, and said in a complaining tone, "What a big show, I've been waiting for you for a long time." "You don't have to wait." Shi Yun walked up to him. Hisui heard that her tone was not good. "Why did I make you angry?" Shi Yun's expression remained the same. "I thought of the time when you took me in a battery car when I was in junior high school, and then broke my leg. How many years ago did it happen? You are a poor donkey." Hisui gave her the bag in his hand. "No wonder I woke up this morning with pain all over my body. You wouldn't stab me, would you? You're a donkey." Shi Yun took the bag and it was quite heavy in his hand. "What is it? If you don't come back to me during the summer vacation, I will go back. I happened to meet your grandma. She knew that I would come to your school today, so she asked me to bring it for you on the way." Inside the bag was a glass jar containing a jar of grandma's vegetables. In addition to this glass jar, there is also a red envelope. The red envelopes are probably reusable, and the red envelopes are still a century-old double happiness. Shi Yun took the bag, and Hisui continued, "Your grandma asked me to bring a message, saying that the phone at home is not shut down, and you can call her back when you are free." Shi Yun remained silent, looked down at the bag in his hand, and ignored Hisui's words. "So what are you doing at our school?" "Hisui, academic exchange." The answer wasn't too surprising. Shi Yun let out an "oh." Hisui saw that she was not angry, and her voice sounded weak, so he raised his hand and patted her forehead. "It doesn't start until 9:30, let's go to your cafeteria for breakfast." Shi Yun had a poor appetite, so he took a bowl of porridge at the window. She picked a place at random, and took out the grandma's food that Hisui brought her today from the bag. Grandma looked older. Shi Yun didn't expect the lid of the glass jar to be so difficult to open. "My own fingertips were twisted and hurt, and it didn't cause any substantial damage to the lid." When Hisui came over with the dinner plate, he saw Shi Yun's hard expression and smiled. After putting down the dinner plate, he reached out and motioned for her to give the jar to himself. He also had a little trouble unscrewing it, but finally succeeded. Hisui handed back the opened grandma's dish to Shi Yun, picked up the egg on the plate, put the egg between his palm and the table, pressed down slightly with his hand, and rolled the egg around. Cracks appear in the shell. The eggs were easy to peel. He peeled off half of the shell and handed it to Shi Yun. "Do you want egg whites?" Shi Yun, "No." Hisui started to eat by himself. "Didn't you love egg whites before?" Shi Yun ignored him. She asked for some white porridge, so she took a spoon to drink white porridge, but the spoon was not very easy to break away the tightly packed grandma's dishes. Hisui handed her the unused chopsticks and looked at Shi Yun's small bowl of porridge paired with oversized grandma's dishes. After picking up grandma's dishes, she returned the chopsticks to Hisui, and handed him the jar in her hand. He was not polite and picked up his chopsticks. Hisui tasted the grandma's dishes this time, and it was still the old style. Grandma Shi Yun's cooking skills have not deteriorated at all. It was exactly the same as what they ate at Shi Yun's house when they were young. After picking up the food, he didn't stop talking. "Don't worry about what my mother said during the tomb sweeping in Qingming." Shi Yun was stirring the porridge, without looking at him with downcast eyes. "I didn't take it to heart." Hisui knew it was a lie as soon as he heard it, so he didn't save her face, and directly exposed her. "I didn't worry about it, then why didn't you reply to me when I sent you a message before?" Shi Yun didn't hide it either. "I simply find you annoying and don't want to go back." It's been a long time since she'd not want to reply to this message. Hisui knew that this time could be accurate to the number of days, a total of 1115 days. Seeing her poor mental state, Hisui sighed. "Shi Yun." Just as he was about to speak, his cell phone rang. Shi Yun glanced at it, saw the note, and knew it was his girlfriend. He directly connected the phone in front of her. Hey, here, I'm having dinner with Shi Yun now, help her grandma deliver something to her? Okay, then I'll find you when I'm done. The phone hung up quickly. Hisui didn't pick up a lot of grandma's food, so after hanging up the phone, he flipped the phone upside down on the table, picked up the sumai on the plate with chopsticks, gave one to Shi Yun, and ate the other by himself. I was in Huijin that day. Saw you. Since she didn't want to reply to the message, Hisui asked her to talk to her face to face. She pushed aside the sumai in the bowl with a spoon. There were more grandma's vegetables in the bowl than porridge. She felt that the bitterness was salty, bitter, but for a moment she didn't know whether the bitterness was taste or spiritual. Hisui asked, with a boyfriend. The bottom of the sumai was soaked in the porridge, and Shi Yun hung the grandmother's vegetables stuck to the sumai skin with a spoon, looking at it nonchalantly. If I find a boyfriend, are you happy? Hisui nodded as she expected. Not only am I happy, but Auntie's spirit in heaven is also happy, and my mother is also happy. At this point, he paused, and then fell silent. Shi Yun knew what was behind the silence. Curling the corners of her mouth, she smiled wryly. I never thought that my finding a boyfriend could make so many people happy. Hisui heard her say this, and knew that she was still half stuck in the past. Obviously it would hurt and uncomfortable. Angry at her, she refused to let go of the past. Shi Yun, you know better than anyone else, it's impossible. The white porridge was gone. Shi Yun's last spoonful was almost all grandma's food. She took a big bite. It was salty and bitter. Yes, it is impossible. Shi Yun's eyes were sore. I know. After breakfast, Shi Yun separated from him at the entrance of the cafeteria. After Hisui said goodbye, he said, look forward. Shi Yun ignored him. He knew where the academic exchanges were held, and Shi Yun didn't want to join him with a half-eaten can of grandma's food. She went back to the dormitory under the sun, put the bag on the table, took out the grandma's food and the red envelope in the bag, and put it on the table. Opening the red envelope, there were 2,000 yuan in it. Shi Yun looked at the stack of new banknotes with serial numbers, thinking that when she was a child, her grandparents, parents, and grandparents would always go to the bank to exchange new money for her to wrap red envelopes every Chinese New Year. Every New Year's Eve, the kids in the old street like to compare themselves with how many red envelopes they get. Every time, Shi Yun will take some old money from relatives and forcefully exchange money with Hisui without asking if Hisui is willing. Putting the money back into the red envelope, Shi Yun clicked on the phone's communication list and found the home phone number. No one answered the first call, and it was not connected until the second call was made. Shi Yun heard Grandma panting hello on the phone, and she called Grandma. When Grandma heard that it was Shi Yun, her voice immediately filled with joy. It's my daughter. After finishing speaking, Grandma immediately called Grandpa on the phone. Old man, it's Nanan, and Nanan called back. Slow down, don't fall. Hello, baby girl. Listening to his grandfather's voice, Shi Yun could imagine what was going on the other end of the phone. The handset of a landline was placed between two old people, just like grabbing discounted eggs in a supermarket. Shi Yun called out, Grandpa. Grandpa responded, Zaya, he went to your school today, did you see him? I got it. Shi Yun poked the glass jar on the table with his hand, and suddenly felt that he had no conscience, like a person who only accepted money and things to call his grandparents who loved him since he was a child. Grandpa continued, Grandma's food is still at home. Your grandma is going to bring you a big jar. I said it will be broken. It's better to send it to you after eating. There is no refrigerator in your dormitory. The enthusiasm of the elders on the other end of the phone made Shi Yun more like an unfilial granddaughter who only wanted profit. A few seconds after she didn't answer the call, her grandma snatched the phone again. When are you coming back? Your father is not at home these days, so you should come back. Grandma and Grandpa will cook for you whatever dishes you want to eat. Shi Yun thought of that home, the home that he got now because of himself, and the scene of her mother's death reappeared in front of Shi Yun's eyes again, and her eyes were astringent. It will take a while, I've been too busy recently. Just like the son who doesn't come home often, it's an excuse. The phone call didn't take long, and after Shi Yun hung up the phone, his mood still didn't improve. As soon as the phone was put down, the phone rang again. The note on the call is Wei Zongying. The author has something to say. I participated in JJ's essay solicitation activity, and I want some support. Is that okay to say? Thanks to the little angels who voted for me or irrigated nutrient solution during 2022-050922:17:052112:07:56. Thanks to the little angels who cast rockets, Aju, Chen Xiaowan. Thanks to the little angel who threw the grenade, Aju 4, Luckifcht 1. Thanks to the little angel who cast the mine, Luckifcht 5, 5T5 legal wife 2. A string of garbled codes 1, thanks to the little angel of the irrigation nutrient solution, don't roll it up, I can't roll it anymore. 20 bottles. Nicole 17 bottles, Chen Xiao 10 bottles, Kia 4 bottles, Nai Zhou Chen 1 bottle. Thank you very much for your support, I will continue to work hard.